How do you do, everyone? My name is... and this is the Bloody Disgusting Network. The succeeding show will fill you with dread. Have a good time.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of oh.
Greetings, shitweasels, and welcome yet again to the Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast. My name is Rockin' Randall Colburn, aka Kurtzburn, aka Alien Face, and today we are here to discuss what's easily one of the weirder entries in the King canon. Yes, it's 2001's Dreamcatcher, a story of ass aliens and sad adult men. Who is joining me for this journey into the fresh-blown unknown? Jen, say hello and tell me, when did you first encounter the Dreamcatcher?
Hey, this is Jen Laddiebuck, or maybe Ladybuck Adams. And I remember when this book came out and my friend was reading it and he was not enjoying it. And so I was like, okay, maybe I'll give it a pass. And this was kind of in my period of not really being super into King. So I just kind of missed it. But then I read it on my chronological reread. So maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. And I did not like it for a long time. I put it at the very bottom of my list because, like, I feel like I can let a lot of King stuff go, but sometimes there are books that actively piss me off, and that's this was one of them. And so I was kind of going into it really looking for things to like, and I found a lot of things that I did like. So this trip through the Catcher was better than the first one, but yeah.
Nice.
So.
What edition did you read?
I I listened to the audiobook, which is read by Jeffrey DeMunn.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and he did
Jeffrey
a great
DeMunn.
job. Yeah.
Love him. Mel, say hello and tell us your Dreamcatcher journey.
Hi, this is Mel. Suck my bender.
Yeah.
And so this book came out in 2000, right? I think at that time I
2001.
2001. Okay, so I was 11 or 12. I actually don't remember the book coming out. What I remember most vividly is the trailer for the movie.
Oh.
Just the trailer, not the movie itself. There was just a portion of it where they show McCarthy, the guy with the first shit weasel, like doing the weird, like head turn too fast in horror movie style, like kind of stuttering on the film. And it really scared me. The trailer really scared me. That was my first exposure to Dreamcatcher. And I read the book soon after that. And I am a sucker for Stephen King's treatment of aliens. And so I remember the book being not panned, but definitely held like in less renown than his other works. And I remember reading it and being like, I don't get why. Like, this was pretty fun. But this go around, I mean, that was years and years ago. I didn't remember anything. And I can't wait to get into it because it is weird. And I am a little bit of a defender, with the caveat that it has a lot of problems.
The Dreamcatcher defender has logged on.
I am in the chat.
I'm with you, by the way. We'll see. But yeah, Anna, say hello and tell us your Dreamcatcher journey.
Hi, my name's Anna Marie. Fuck me, Freddie. Cox.
Many beavers on the pod today.
So many beeves, almost all beeves.
Oh God.
I also am a defender, I suppose. I think that's kind of funny that we wound up with, like, I guess only people who wanted to do this particular episode.
Yeah, I think that's part of it.
Once you have like a weird fascination with it, obviously we're going to talk more about King's scatology here, and he's always had a fascination with poop and bodily fluids, and this is a real celebration of that.
Oh yeah, comes to a head with this one.
Ew.
I don't know if it's a head, it comes somewhere.
When did you first read this book?
I think I read it when it came out, and I remember it being just I didn't love it, but I think I was actually kind of charmed by its weirdness.
Yeah.
Like it's it takes a lot of elements that are really familiar for King, right? I mean, we have the group of boys, we have the magical special person. We have like military, doing weird ops.
Yeah.
We have teeth falling out. That's something that I don't know why that's an alien thing for him, but
yeah, that's Tommy.
And of course,
knockers.
actually, I believe I also like Tommy knockers.
Yeah.
So
You're in good company.
yeah, I know. I mean, I love the books he's written high, basically. Like those are like, there's something about the books he's written when he's clearly impaired that there's just something. Shouldn't say I love them, but I find them fascinating.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say is, so it has all these elements that are very familiar, and yet he puts them together in this very odd way. Like somehow it winds up being, despite all these familiar elements, unlike any other King book.
Yeah. I mean, and especially because this book is so beholden to, I think, a lot of like collective cultural sort of ideas regarding aliens. Like it's very much a National Enquirer sort of portrait of aliens as it begins, and the plot elements I think can be tied to a lot of classic sci-fi, but then he spins it in just absolutely strange directions. Yeah, I read this right when it came out. I think I bought it like the week it came out, and I remember I liked it by and large when I read it, but I remember being extremely disturbed by parts of it and then struggling with aspects of it. And I think this was around the time my fascination with Stephen King was starting to wane a little bit. And yeah, but I never reread it. So this was a really cool reread because I hadn't read it in so long and I really didn't remember much at all. Like you, Mel, I did not remember much at all. And the parts I did remember, I think resonated even more brightly for me in this one. And I think being a sad adult man, I think I can relate even more to a lot of these guys who are around my age in this book. So it's cool. But yeah, let's talk about the history a little bit. Before we kind of start breaking down the themes and everything. This was the first full novel that King released following his 1999 accident, and that's going to hang heavy over this narrative, which we're going to be talking about a lot. He began it in November 1999, just a few months after the accident. He wrote it by hand using a fountain pen. He's often talked about how it was too painful to sit at his word processor, so he wrote this at his kitchen table with plenty of pillows and plenty of OxyContin on hand. He admits to being very screwed on Oxy during the writing of this book, and he said he was taking up to 100 pills a day at one point. His working title, as he says in the afterword, famously was Cancer. I can't.
Thank you, Tabby.
I know. Tabby said,
Tabby's just like, no.
Right. Number one, you're high.
Yes.
You know.
I do want to get to a point where we suggest alternate titles. Like, what would you have named it? Because I also don't think Dreamcatcher is right.
No.
I want to talk about the Dreamcatcher stuff because you can almost see like halfway through the book where he decides that it's not called Cancer anymore and it's going to be called Dreamcatcher because the Cancer stuff kind of fades into the background and the Dreamcatcher stuff becomes very pronounced. But yeah, so this was released in March 2001, debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, of course, stayed there for about 3 weeks. Lasted roughly 15 weeks on the list, which is pretty average for a King book back then. And in 2003, it was made into a star-studded film written by William Goldman and directed by Lawrence Kasdan. We'll have a whole episode on that early next month. I'm very excited for that because I've not seen that movie since I saw it in the theaters, and I remember thinking it fucking sucked.
Yeah, I remember it being so bad.
Yeah.
I can't wait to
watch it.
I'm going to watch it tonight. Like,
Yeah, I think actually
The cast too.
the cast is
amazing.
so
Cast.
good.
William Goldman.
Yeah,
I mean,
and William Goldman, Lawrence Kasdan, like everything about it should be good. But the thing is, like, I have a feeling I might enjoy it more as like, a so bad it's good kind of thing. I know it's been covered on like, How Did This Get Made and other pods. So
But this is such a book. It's not a movie book.
Right. Like, how do you look at this book? How do you read this book and think, yeah, I know how we'll make this?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Did you say you can't polish a turd, maybe?
I'll just say King was a big fan of the movie before it came out.
Was he
like,
sober?
I don't know, man. He talks a lot about
sober good
he's
yet,
like,
or was he like still high?
He's like, they nailed it. It was like how he said it in interviews. But okay,
Not sober.
so,
I guess that answers our question.
King. Here's what some of the things that King has said about Dreamcatcher over the years. He didn't do a ton of interviews when the book came out because he was still recovering, but he did a lot for the movie. And so a lot of the quotes I've got here are from interviews he was doing around the movie, or some of his sort of long, like his huge interviews that he did with like The Guardian and a few others. In The Guardian, he said, when I sat down to work on Dreamcatcher, I was in terrible pain, taking all these heavy drugs by the jarful, and I was on crutches, a brace on my leg, and all I knew was when I went to bed at night, I would lie there and I'd think of this guy on a hunter stand in a tree, like a shooter's platform, where you go and you've been hurt sometimes. And I thought, here's this guy. It's starting to snow. He wants to get his deer because it's hunting season. And here comes this thing he thinks is a deer, but it's a person. That's all I had. I didn't know more than that. And I started to write it longhand, not expecting much, hoping it might help with the pain a bit. And suddenly I had this huge, huge book, 1,000 pages long, all out of that one situation. And then to the Boston Globe, he said, I'll say this, that it was a cathartic book it was cathartic for me to write that book. Most of it was written in Boston in an apartment on Commonwealth Avenue. I couldn't work at the word processor because I was still in too much pain. I wrote in longhand, propped up on pillows. A lot of the novel was about going through a really painful experience and coming out changed, like something inside of me had taken possession and changed me forever. And later in the Ottawa Citizen, he said, he talked about how he only had certain periods where he could write, like where he only had a few hours every day where he thought he could really function in this way. So he said, I said to myself, I have this window, I have this period of lucidity, and I'm going to write in it. I couldn't sit at a desk or anything, so I sat at the kitchen table with my pillows and my little foam ring that I sat on, and I wrote it longhand. He said, writing longhand made it possible for me to work because it slowed me down, and my body could keep up with my mind. Or let's put it this way. My mind was forced to slow down to the rate of my body and change the quality of the prose in ways I would never have appreciated.
And this is a doorstop of a book. This is like 600 plus pages.
Huge.
So to imagine that much paper, like written longhand.
Yeah, there's an interview on CBS, like a TV interview that I'm going to have some quotes from, but it's cool because you actually see the ledger that he wrote it in. It's this like huge kind of leather bound thing. And the camera kind of flashes over the prose and you see him like crossing out words and everything. It's pretty cool to see that. So what was it? In Rolling Stone, they asked, the story was really a metaphor for your own pain. He said it's related in two ways. The character in the tree stand had been hit by a car and was recuperating. I knew how that felt. And then when I wrote about it, I didn't think about pain as much. It's like being hypnotized. And so the other way he kind of talked about it, and this kind of relates to what you were saying, Anna, about this fascination with flatulence and everything. And this is kind of how he justified it. He said, good horror stories take you over a taboo line into the territory that is off limits. But there are so few off limits places left. The bedroom used to be taboo. Now the camera goes right in and watches what goes on. So for him, the bathroom was the one taboo place left. He told the Baltimore Sun, it's virgin territory as far as the camera goes. And some really terrible things in our lives are things we first discover there. It's where we take our clothes off, look at ourselves in the mirror, perform certain eliminatory functions, and where a lot of the times we get the first inkling that something's not right with us anymore. And he elaborated on that in the CBS interview with Bryant Gumbel. He said, he was talking about how, like, for his generation, there's nothing really taboo anymore. And he goes, but he said, what door is still closed to popular entertainment? The bathroom. And he said, the bathroom is like where you first detect cancer. Or he says, you see something in the bowl that's not supposed to be there. He said, that's scary. And then he cracked, you can read it in the bathroom, but probably with the totoilet seat down. He also called it.
I agree with all of this.
Yeah.
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 It makes total sense to me.
I didn't enjoy, but the strongest connection I had with this book was with all of the toilet humor, or like all of the bathroom stuff. And I think what I think is most interesting about this book is it's kind of like his like processing through his pain and being in a hospital and like losing control of your body. And I remember, so I had a C-section, and after you have a C-section, they won't let you eat until you've passed gas, because that is the proof that your digestive system is working again. And so like, it's like when you are in that much pain and when you have so little control over your body, your body just becomes this horrific place where all of the things that that are normally in private or out in public, you know, like I also had a spinal fusion when I was 16. And I remember like my family was just in the room while I was like having to, like, I had a catheter and they could tell when I was peeing, you know, and it's just this, and like my mom had to help me go to the bathroom. So it's just this really humbling experience. And so I like read all of this horrific bathroom humor as him just kind of processing the fact that you realize how kind of disgusting your body, all of the bodily functions are when you are confronted with other people seeing them and having to help you with them, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of I'm going to defend the toilet.
I love it. It reminds me actually of just talking about how uncomfortable we are with death in the same way.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it is taboo in the sense that we don't want to be in the room with it and acknowledging it, but there are scenarios in which it is totally unavoidable.
Right.
And the fact is we are one big tube. Maybe if we got a little more comfortable with that fact, it wouldn't be so scary, but the scares work because we are.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't want to face that.
I mean, there's a circle of life element to it, right? Because also there's this book about death, but also what makes us feel more like a child.
Yes.
Right, is to be helpless over our bodily functions.
Yes.
Right? Like
100%.
that is what's truly frightening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, and the one thing that kind of got me, I remember really having trouble with, because I'm such a prude about that stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember having more trouble with it when I read it the first time. And this time, I don't know, I didn't have as much trouble with it because I think I was able to see it more in the terms we're talking about, which is it's not about like shit, it's about fear.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And that is more clear to me now. Because in some ways, actually, the grossest scene is the scene where the bullies are trying to get Duddits to eat the dog poop. That's the gross scene. That's the truly upsetting scene in the movie in the book. Whereas the stuff about the shit weasels and whatnot is gross and uncomfortable, but it's scary and not, I don't know how to put it. Like, it's not like, it doesn't make me feel icky in the way that the bully scene does.
Yeah,
Totally.
I mean, like
About humans.
Yeah, one of the scariest scenes in it for me is when they go to check on McCarthy in his bedroom and he's gone and he's in the bathroom and there's just the blood all over the sheets. Like that's so fucking scary to me. Like especially the older I get.
Yeah.
And
so many of the cemetery ones, I couldn't decide whether I would put them in the cemetery or in Pound Cake. Like I feel like there's so much overlap in this one.
I think this is a cool book that sort of merges those two because he finds the fear in all of them.
Right.
But
it's very alien too. It's like the violation of the body, the invasion of something where it's not supposed to be internally.
Yeah. So
by alien, I meant the movie, not just the concept of aliens.
Well, speaking of the concept of aliens, the Chicago Sun-Times talked to King about that, and they said, when did your fascination with extraterrestrials begin? He said, I guess probably when I was a kid reading the thrilling wonder stories in EC Comics, the space adventures and that sort of thing. And just the idea that if aliens did come from outer space, they probably wouldn't come flashing the peace sign. I just once wanted to go all out with that War of the Worlds type deal. They asked, some of Dreamcatcher's alien spawn take the form of, to put it plainly, fanged butt weasels. Where did you get that idea? King goes, the shit weasels. Yeah, I don't know. The major thing was saying to myself, nobody's done this. Nobody wants to talk about that. And I thought if nobody wants to talk about a thing, that's got to be a real vulnerable place. I want to go there and see what happens. And they asked, so is it safe to say you pulled those weasels out of your ass? And he said, I pulled them out of my ass. That's right, I did. You know what? I had this accident, and they do the most awful things to you, the most undignified things you can imagine. Your body is invaded in the wake of something like that. There are tubes that go up point A, and there are other tubes that go up point B. And I really think I was working a lot of that out. So I think that's a great way to compartmentalize those shit weasels. So for him, though, in Rolling Stone, he said Dreamcatcher did not age very well for him. He said, well, I don't like Dreamcatcher very much. Dreamcatcher was written after the accident. I was using a lot of OxyContin for the pain, and I couldn't work on a computer back then, and because it hurt too much to sit in that position. So I wrote the whole thing longhand, and I was pretty stoned when I wrote it because of the oxy, and that's another book that shows the drugs at work. And it's interesting that he says the same thing about Tommyknockers, which was another alien book, and that was the last book he wrote when he was blown out on cocaine and stuff like that. So it is interesting that both of these books about aliens that he wrote while in the depths of, being stoned, it is interesting he has this sort of complex relationship with them as he gets older. And it probably a lot of that has to do less with the books and more about, his sort of experience writing it or bad memories that he associates with it.
But they're both it's not his great books. I mean, like, let's
I agree,
also be fair. Like,
yeah, but I think that I feel like he has a lot worse books that he still embraces. You know?
that is true.
So
I wanted to point out something about the addiction piece here, which is that I do think it's interesting that it's the aliens he gravitates to when, under the influence, something where you're not control of yourself, something making you do things that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Right. And also losing control of your physical body is part of being in the throes of addiction. I've pissed my bed drunk plenty of times. Like it's one of the least, it's like of all of the things you don't talk about as a in recovery, to me, like that's one of the things I admitted to the last. Cause like, it wasn't until I heard a bunch of people in the rooms also admit it that I was like, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yep.
That
I was
happened to
peed
me
in my
too.
hamper.
And I'm sure it has to have happened to him. And it's just utterly humiliating. And it is this infantilizing thing. And it's also this admission of like, I've lost control. Right. Yeah. In like this very literal way. And also this is clearly no longer fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and there's also the fact that like given the amount of pain he's in and knowing that he had been sober, like he has no choice but to use these painkillers. And I'm sure if he could choose not to have started taking oxy, he probably wouldn't have, because he knows that's a risk for your sobriety, So there's also that element of like being trapped in the pain of your body that is maybe forcing you back into something that could lead to an addiction again, because I hear that he was taking 100 pills a day. And
he wasn't then taking that as directed. I'm sorry. Like that is not.
That's a lot. And it makes me think like that, like, I'm so impressed and grateful that he did not become addicted to them,
And it sounds like, they weren't even, he was in so much pain despite taking all those pills. Like they were maybe taking the edge off a little, but he couldn't write his computer. Like that just sounds like hell.
Yeah. And he talked about in at least one interview, he mentioned that he was worried about sort of about addiction taking hold of him again. I didn't see any interviews where he talked about sort of coming off the pills. So I don't know what that process was like, but obviously he did. But I mean, like when I read, and he said he was taking up to 100 at least at a certain point. So he talks about it with a certain frankness that I think someone in recovery would. But yeah, I was hoping that I could find some interview or something where he talked about what the process was like weaning himself off of it, but didn't see anything. So critical reception. This book was, I think a mixed bag. The Guardian really liked it. They said it would be easy to make this book sound ludicrous. One of the main subplots concerns aliens who seem to be made of cancer and who put the aforementioned shitweasels inside people. But the most enviable element of King's writing has always been that whenever the action gets really weird, his prose tightens up to take the strain, justifying his excesses and taking the reader into new fictional territory. Dreamcatcher has to be read slowly and carefully to follow the action, especially towards the end, with characters possessed by aliens, reading each other's minds, and popping in and out of the plot. At almost 600 pages, it is slightly heavy going, but by no means a disappointment. The New York Times also was a fan. They said, to be sure, in Dreamcatcher, Mr. King supplies enough spooky effects and space aliens to meet his usual quota of weird Frisians, and throws in enough messy gastrointestinal side effects to keep this book from seeming to have gone soft. But beneath all that, there is also a new urgency. In this craftily phantasmagoric story about dreams, telepathy, and extraterrestrials, the emphasis is less on fear than on the shared will and capacity to survive. Mr. King, for all of his lovingly captured belches and much worse, writes more fluently than ever, and at times with simple, unexpected grace. Also very funny, there was a correction on the article from March 19, 2001 that said, a book review of Stephen King's Dreamcatcher on Thursday misidentified a character in an earlier King novel, It. The name is Pennywise, not Penny Whistle.
That's a much less intimidating name if he had the name Penny Whistle.
Killed me. Entertainment Weekly was usually a big fan of King's, not a fan of this book. They said the pop cultural parallels a King trademark / tick don't end with Kurtz. Dreamcatcher also recalls the X-Files, Alien, Close Encounters, Fire in the Sky, E.T., Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Independence Day, and War of the Worlds. The fact that King directly refers to all of these earlier works in the text, one military officer observes of the invasion, "It's like Independence Day, only here's the hook," or in the woods, doesn't make the book feel any less derivative. Nor does it ever feel remotely frightening. The supposedly spooky effects of the virus, people's teeth fall out, watches run backward, all seem pretty silly. By the time we reach the novel's climax, which involves a bacon-craving alien and a mind-reading dog, the story has long ago sunk into ludicrousness. The Dreamcatcher has snared a real nightmare, King notes at one point. After slogging through this overlong muddle, you'll know the feeling. And then in Grady Hendrix's Stephen King reread on tour, which we always love to visit, great insights, he wrote, "Whereas it felt epic in scope and ambition, Dreamcatcher feels small and limited. The set pieces feel exhausted. The solutions to problems seem pat. The borrowings from other books and movies give a sense that we've been here before, many times. King also seems to be doubling down on the grossness factor, and while part of that may be because he was forced into an extreme awareness of his bodily functions when he was writing this book, scenes like a man almost picking his nose to death feel like he's trying too hard to be Stephen King, grandmaster of the gross out." I love that scene, by the way.
Me too.
Because that is a genuine terror of mine.
That you'll do that one day.
Well, just things entering my nose or my ears are things that really get me going. So, okay, cool. Let's read a synopsis. This is from Amazon.com. In Derry, Maine, 4 young boys once stood together and did a brave thing, something that changed them in ways they hardly understand. A quarter of a century later, the boys are men who have gone their separate ways, though they still get together once a year to go hunting in the north woods of Maine. But this time it's different. This time a man comes stumbling into their camp, lost, disoriented, and muttering about lights in the sky. Before long, these old friends will be plunged into the most remarkable events of their lives as they struggle with a terrible creature from another world. Their only chance of survival is locked in their shared past and in the Dreamcatcher. That's a good intro, I think, to what is a very, very strange and interesting book.
Yep.
But yeah, let's pop over and start talking about the ideas and the themes in this in a section we call the hook.
Ah. Yes. Don't you see? Don't you see how clear it all is? Not only can you see the future, I can change it. You can change it, exactly.
All right, many places to begin here, but I think let's just begin with the obvious one, which is aliens. I think that it's important to note where we begin with the aliens in this book is very different than where we end with them in ways that I think I found somewhat confusing. I almost wished that he kept it as simple as it was in the beginning, using the sort of traditional alien iconography, because these are very much grays. You know, these are the aliens that you see in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, in Fire in the Sky. These are the big-headed, big black-eyed aliens that I, on this podcast, many times have talked about scaring the daylights out of me when I saw them on Unsolved Mysteries. Alien face is the scariest thing that I've ever seen in my life, and it remains to this day. So this book scares me in that regard. But yeah, I guess like a general, we already mentioned Tommyknockers a little bit, but how do we like Stephen King's sci-fi work / alien work? I threw down I Am the Doorway as well in there, which I think is probably maybe the earliest recorded alien story that he did. He doesn't do it a lot, but I guess like how does this portrayal of extraterrestrial life stack up against the others for you? Do you prefer these aliens to the ones we get in the Tommyknockers?
I think his aliens are all actually pretty similar in that he's fascinated with the concept of emotionless beings that have advanced technology or at least some sort of threatening capability. And what he's interested in exploring is something that is sentient, but that you can't appeal to. It is that like unfeeling nature that he finds most scary. And it's present in another book about that ends up being about aliens that I won't spoil here, but like that's always what he comes back to with aliens is like they can't show emotion, they can't feel things, and that's really scary. Like I actually really love his different takes on that core concept. I don't know, what do other people think?
That's one of the things that I think is interesting. I'm not really an alien person. Like it's just something that doesn't particularly scare me. Although I can understand why it would be scary. But what I think is so interesting about King is he doesn't really write about the space of it. He writes about aliens here. And so when he is writing aliens, I find it like a lot of times it's more of an exploration of like what it means to be human than what it is to be an alien. Like I love the scenes where Joan, like Mr. Gray, is discovering sweet, you know, or discovering like emotions. I just find that really interesting. And I think, yeah, I love I Am the Doorway. And I love the Tommy Knockers too, because it's so fun. I find this one more interesting than fun personally, but I think that is the interesting hook for me into his aliens, is it's more like how we react to them than it is about them themselves, you know?
Yeah.
I think Jen is totally right. This is his exploration of what it means to be human. And I also love the bacon stuff makes me laugh. Like I mean, I think it's supposed to, but like the part in the book where bacon sandwich with mayo, like he ups the ante, you know, like it's not just a bacon sandwich with mayo. I actually literally LOL'd. And then something I don't think we've talked about before, but something that I realize is a theme of King's, a clear theme of King's, is imagination and how imagination makes us human. Right. Like that's last time I think I was on to talk about Lucy's story and the word pool and whatnot. Right. Like he loves this idea of the ability of humans to imagine. Yeah. And how our imagination can save us. Right. Like, and that literally is like, that's it too. Right. That's this. And this one, it's as interested in the creation of things out of ideas as Lucy's stories is. Yeah, I think.
Because the way that Jonesy, who gets sort of possessed by this last surviving alien, Mr. Gray, is he kind of builds a mind palace of his own, and with his memories that manifest as objects. And he has this office in the center where he can find refuge, and he kind of shuffles some of his memories in there. So I
have questions about that, the logic of it, but but it's a cool idea, right? Yeah. And the other thing I noticed, and something I really one of the things I was like making a list of what I do like about this book, not just what's interesting, but what I like about it, is I actually really like Owen Underhill. Like, I think it's one of the more interesting characters that King has done. He's not purely evil. He's not purely good, right? Like King tends to be kind of black and white about those things. But what redeems Underhill in some ways is his imagination. Yeah. Right. His ability to imagine the feelings of other people, his curiosity, like the big scene where he finally crosses the line of Kurtz, and he turns on the radio to hear what the broadcast is from
he like allows they're gonna gun down the aliens, and he lets everyone hear their final words before they gun them down, and Kurtz is like, that's a weak emotional move, you know?
Yeah. And it's what makes us human. It's emotion, it's curiosity, it's imagination. It's like, what if they are like us? That's what his thought is, and that's what he wants the other men to think about. Not just men, actually. There's some very terrible military women in this
equal opportunity,
right? But that's what humanizes Underhill, right? Is that and what makes Kurtz actually one of the more fun villains.
Oh yeah. Because he's an alien in his own way, and that he's as dispassionate as the aliens, and that
no emotions, no imagination.
No emotions, and that's the only way I think you know, and that's interesting because he also thinks he can't lose, which is how the aliens think. You know, the aliens in this are clearly part of a dying institution, which is super interesting because King loves to frame his villains as usually being desperate and part of a crumbling institution, something that where it's not as strong as it used to be, but there is sort of this pervasive belief that they'll come through on the other end still winning. And that's how the aliens think. They're like, we don't lose, we keep going, we win. And that's very much how Kurtz thinks too. And I think it's that and it's that sort of that military mindset as well, which is we control everything, we determine the narrative, and we map the path forward. And so it's fun to see when he gets taken down. Obviously it's very satisfying because you like to see these people who think they can't lose actually lose.
I love the duality between Kurtz and the aliens, because they're similar, as everyone has mentioned, but they are also two kinds of mindless evils for me at either ends of a spectrum. Like Kurtz is individualist, he's selfish, he's very emotional in that he's grudge holding, he's very obsessive. He has this like memory of who has wronged him, whereas the virus, the aliens, they're like a collective evil. They're like consuming, but they're somewhat quiet. They don't really have a memory in the same way. They don't have emotion. And so like both are dangerous and both actually have their attraction to people. But it seems to me like he was positing the similar consequences of two types of thinking, this like kind of emotionless hive mind versus this extremely petty, powerful individual.
Yeah, totally. And like in the book, they even King actually does draw, or Henry draws like a comparison between Kurtz and the aliens, because when he's kind of saying to Owen, he goes, I think the Greys showed up the way they did because they just can't fucking believe it. I think it was a suicide mission with some gray version of your Mr. Kurtz in charge. They simply cannot conceptualize failure. We always win, they think.
Oh, and Kurtz turns into an alien in his dream at the end too.
Oh yeah. That was cool. The other thing I think these aliens represent is something that we're going to be talking about a lot, which is death. A cancerous parasitic force. When Kurtz is sort of giving his rallying cry when they're going to gun down the Greys that have survived the spaceship crash, he says, they are not helpless little ETs, boys, waiting around for someone to give them a New England telephone card so they can phone home. They are a disease. They are cancer, praise Jesus. And boys, we're one big hot radioactive shot of chemotherapy. And then, like you mentioned the virus smell. That's sort of this the parasite or whatever that kind of forms their being. And isn't it implied later on that like the manifestation of them as Greys is more of, it's kind of a smokescreen in a way?
It's imagined. It's like us projecting our idea of the alien onto, I guess, what is just a bunch of floating spores.
I did not. Then why do they have a ship?
Clear.
That's what, like that.
I am
so
like,
confused.
who is piloting the ship? Are the shit weasels piloting the ship?
So confused.
I know.
That whole like coda is like, wait, what?
I know. I wrote in my notes, I am like, can't they just be fucking aliens? Because like you're raising too many questions.
I
And it was
love that
Josie. Josie
aren't.
wasn't actually taken over. It's
very confusing. I do like
saying?
his ideas on the life cycle and like how they are actually just the spores, and I like that they are a projection, but he does not explain it fully. We have a lot of questions.
Yeah, and I think that's his way sort of I think when he started the book, he's like, I'm going to adhere to the National Enquirer idea of aliens. But then I think maybe he got insecure about the fact that the aliens are so clearly derived from American pop culture, like the way that they're portrayed. And so then he kind of makes them more complex. And he's like, oh, that was how we imagine them because that is the American imagination of what aliens look like.
And then where did that come from? I mean,
Yeah.
I like it.
Obviously, aliens must be real, or else how would we have gotten that picture of aliens? Sorry.
Right. No. I think it is super interesting. And I like it too, Mel. It's just, I remember it was sort of like information overload at the end.
Yeah.
We get so much like explanation for here's what the aliens really are. And part of me almost like doesn't like that because I just love gray aliens. I love alien face. I love that shit because it's so scary to me. So the idea,
the middle ground that was really appealing is that, it's not the Greys. It is a virus that has overtaken and colonized the Greys. Like the Greys used to be their own thing, but now they're just the virus.
Yeah.
They're
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
They're vehicles for it. Like that would have made sense, at least with the piloting of the ship.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That is in the book. I just had forgotten that because there's so many different.
And then if they're just
corners to that,
and if they're just spores, then why are the shit weasels even? Why do they exist?
Because the life cycle seems to be like I do want to clarify this because it's confusing. Like
because where do the shit weasels live? If there's no Greys, if there's no real Greys. Then where are the shit weasels? Where are they existing? What are they feeding off of?
They do populate physical bodies. Like
where in the ship?
We don't know about the ship, but just in general, they go to other planets, probably in physical bodies that they've taken over. There's a lot of like animorphs in this book. But they're like parasitic. They're a virus, right? They're these spores that inhabit a host, and they get there through the shit weasels, which typically only grow to the size of a teaspoon. So if you directly inhale or ingest virus, you get a shit weasel. And you can otherwise just catch the secondary version from being near it. But that's all we really know.
I know. Well, and then Henry says there's like 4 different types of virus. Like,
right.
it goes, yeah.
It's also hilarious to me that virus is just virus with a B.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. I prefer Ripley, like what the military calls it. But no, I think that's super. Thank you for breaking that down, Mel, because I think as it goes on, it does get super confusing, because I think he had all these ideas he introduced at the beginning, and then they shifted, and instead of going back and reworking stuff, he's just like, no, it'll be complex, but let me explain how this works to some degree. And that's where it gets pretty convoluted. But because I wondered about the shit weasels as well. And they say at one point with the shit weasels that it's like getting pregnant. Like, you don't get infected by a shit weasel every time you inhale it, but sometimes you do.
And
So-
sometimes it's beneficial, like if or it's like a symbiotic relationship, you don't really notice it's there, plus you get telepathy.
Yeah.
So
I still have the question. So then what happened with Jonesy? Like,
well,
he was immune, but
yes.
Oh, well,
also-
that's a big question. The question of why Jonesy is immune is something I have thoughts on, and we don't have to talk about it right now, but like I think that's something that is a little bit wobbly in the story. But yeah, essentially, I guess like they have the ability, like, so Mel, would you say like the Jonesy Mr. Gray situation, is that like the Greys have the ability, or the virus has the ability to like possess another person, or is it because Jonesy is so special?
Or is immune not the right word we should be using?
I think the book actually contradicts itself, because at the end it says 50% of the population is probably immune, which implies that 50% of the population would be like Jonesy. But the book also, for more of its text, implies that Jonesy is special because he had a near-death experience.
Yes.
And because he's part of the psychic Duddits chain. So he's immune in a very, very special way.
Yeah, they say it's like brainwaves. Like,
I think immune is not the word that it applies to Jonesy. Like, that's just it's confusing to use the word immune, because or there's something we should stop. But I literally finished this like 2 hours ago.
It's
so
really
the ending is fresh on my mind, and how little sense it makes. Where
we're
it's
not
like,
going to get to
you know,
closure.
Yeah.
Also, are we going to talk about the horrible ableism at some point?
Oh, yeah,
we put a pin in that.
yeah, we'll get there.
We haven't mentioned it, and it's
well,
probably,
and
that's
probably
misery,
should
right?
have done that right up front.
But I don't know though. I think that actually the fact that we haven't mentioned it, I think, speaks to the idea of how superfluous it almost feels to the whole story.
One of the ways it's insulting. It's like, it didn't have to be there.
Yeah, I think we can hold off on that, because I think we
okay.
can mostly talk about the story without getting there, and then when we get to misery, we can kind of
We'll just go off.
a
Okay,
little bit.
all right, okay.
So
aliens, they're an illness, they're death, they're like, it's very Cronenberg-y in that way, like, but also I think there's an argument to be made that they also can represent like intrusive thoughts and depression.
Okay.
They're just very similar to what Henry experiences before they even kind of land, and being in Jonesy's head and being in everyone's head and kind of giving everyone access to those thoughts. It just seems like, an invading force that takes you over and numbs you and tells you everything is fine, but also is making you do terrible things. I think they're a very big catch-all metaphor for like a lot of things that people are going through in this book.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue into the next like part of the hook here, which is pain, death, and this will to survive. And the way I wrote it was like, this is a book about people who are really obsessed with death. Jonesy is terrified death is after him. Henry is sort of inviting death onto his doorstep because he's suicidal. And the aliens, obviously, as I wrote here, I said the aliens represent death on multiple levels, like literal, extinction level, identity death. And then Kurtz thinks death is the answer to all of his problems. Exterminate all that offends. Like Mr. Gray and Kurtz are sort of these grim reaper figures, and then Jonesy and Henry are these people who are terrified of, well, I think obsessed with death in different ways. The way Jonesy is very much King, obviously, I think, in this story. He's somebody who just was hit by a car, is going through the same kind of physical rehabilitation, and has the same issues that King does. I pulled a section here from pretty early in the book where he's talking about he thinks a lot about him in the hospital, and and various voices that he heard. And he kind of interprets these voices that he heard as Death's voice. He says Death had missed him in the street and had then come to the hospital to finish the job. Death masquerading as a man, or perhaps it had been a woman, it was hard to tell, in pain. Someone who said Marcy but meant Jonesy. He says the idea passed, all the funny ideas he'd had in the hospital eventually passed, but it left a residue. Caution was the residue. He had no memory of Henry's calling and telling him to watch himself for the next little while. And but since then, Jonesy had watched himself. He was careful because maybe Death was out there, and maybe sometimes it called your name. And then later he says, old creeping Death, Death pretending to be a patient. Death had lost track of him. Sure, it was possible. It was a big hospital, stuffed full of pain, sweating agony out of its very seams. And now old creeping Death was trying to find him again, trying to trick him, trying to make him give himself away. And that's him kind of categorizing Mr. Grey, chasing him through his mind, trying to trick him, and because he knows that Mr. Grey represents death. Whereas Henry is like obsessed with suicide. And one chapter begins, suicide, Henry had discovered, had a voice. It wanted to explain itself. The problem was that it didn't speak much English. Mostly it lapsed into its own fractured pidgin. But it didn't matter. Just the talking seemed to be enough. Once Henry allowed suicide its voice, his life had improved enormously. He even had nights when he slept again. Not a lot of them, but enough. And he had never had a really bad day. And so these notions of death to me are really fascinating and obsessive. And I think because they were running through King's head in a lot of different ways. We talked about this, Jen, I know, like on our episode about the accident and the ways that King sort of obsessed over death, and also the randomness of it all happening, that this van bounded over the highway and hit him as he walked on the side of the road. And there was no meaning to it. There was no malice to it. There was nothing to it. It was completely random. And we see that same obsession manifest in Jonesy when he almost shoots McCarthy walking through the woods, because he says, McCarthy has no idea how close he came to dying. Like, I had a gun trained on his head. I could have done that. And he obsesses over this idea throughout the early part of the book. And I think that's King trying to put himself in the shoes of the guy who hit him, Brian Smith, and trying to say, like, we're always sort of existing on these various precipices of death at all minutes. And it's extremely dark, but I think it's something you do think about when you go through something as traumatic as he went through physically. And I think that's sort of the beginnings of these musings on death and pain. And because like everybody's in pain throughout this entire book, like everybody is always like walking through the woods, hurting their knee, hurting their hip, exhaustion, having something in their stomach that's making them sick. Everyone's always fucking sick in this book. And
it's so concerned with the utter frailty of the human body and its permeability. Like,
totally.
Just reminding us over and over that no matter how powerful our minds, even if we're literally exceptional psychic children in the past, like your body is the eventual battleground that will be breached by elements, aliens, ailments, everything. I really love that stuff just because I don't know if it's a healthy reminder, but it always hits home, right? Like it's just bleak and terrifying to consider.
There's a throwaway line towards the end where Mr. Grey has the thought about how he can't believe how Jonesy has disregarded his body, considering how important it is. And he has this thought, is like, these humans are like 90% emotion and 30, and like it's like 70% emotion and 20% consumption. And that it all has to do with their body. Like, why does he take better care of it? I can't remember the numbers. It's a funny aside.
Yeah, I agree.
And I was kind of like, I was like lying in bed eating cookies. I was like, yeah, you know what? He has a point.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is I feel like this book so much, it's not so much about the impact of the body pain. It's about the aftermath, and it's about like dragging the bodies through the snow and like having to stand on your knee that's like essentially shattered. And so it's just, it feels like him just wading through what has happened to his body. And the thing that I think is so interesting about that scene when he is pointing, when he thinks he's about to shoot a buck, is that he keeps having these thoughts about whether it would have been better if he had just shot him and if that had solved any problems. And like, I think for a while I was kind of confusing Henry's suicidality with Jonesy's like obsession with death, because there's this one there's this element of him being afraid that it's around every corner. And so you like view yourself as so incredibly fragile that you don't want to take any kinds of risks. But then really close to that is well, fuck that. And if it's around every corner, then what's the point? Which is kind of where I see Henry, and I love the suicide had a voice line. That's something that really resonated with me because I don't consider myself suicidal and I'm safe, but I have intrusive thoughts that take the form of suicidality. And a lot of times it is not words, it's an image from a movie, or just like an image of self-harm, And so I thought, and so I've talked about that a lot in therapy, and I finally got to the point where I just kind of let them flow out of my head, and I stopped trying to fight them or figure them out, and it did get better. Now, I think Henry is saying something a little different.
Yeah.
I think he's saying once I accept the fact that I'm going to eventually kill myself, it takes the pressure of the decision off. That's kind of how I interpret it. But I read that as King kind of going through and saying, would it have been better if I had just died in the accident?
Yeah.
Would I have spared myself all of this pain? Because this is before he can see the other side of it,
Yeah.
Like I read The Little Green God of Agony is a story in Bazaar of Bad Dreams, which I really love because I feel like that's this really interesting exploration of pain and what you will do when you are in such extreme pain. But I read that as a person who is not in that pain anymore.
Yeah.
And Dreamcatcher feels like somebody who is writing in every stroke of his pencil is pain, and he's processing it. And I love that he says it's cathartic and I can feel that,
Yeah, they all the boys feel like a facet of him
totally
working through something.
Although it's interesting that the two heroes wind up being a Harvard graduate and a professor.
Yep.
Yeah.
We don't get the blue collar guys
I know
swinging in to save the day, which is kind of King, part of him that I don't like so much.
Yeah, that's super funny. I thought about that too. Yeah.
And I mean, I've got some stuff. I think that kind of relates to the Duddits character also. I think there's this element, and this is something we talked about in our episode on the accident too. There's this element of thank God my mind still works, even though my body doesn't. And so I think, and that's also kind of related to Brian Smith, who was the person driving the car. I feel like that is something that he is consoling himself with, is that I still have this ability to think and create, especially when he's writing this. So I don't think it's an accident that it is the Harvard grad and the professor. That's
and he doesn't even I part of me just resents that he doesn't give Beeve and Pete a whole lot of imagination. Right.
Yeah.
He doesn't grant them that, even though it's perfectly possible to not be a Harvard graduate and to be smart.
Yeah.
Totally. And to
two.
have a big imagination. You
Yeah.
know?
I love those two characters. I remember being so disappointed when I first read it that they both bite it pretty early.
Yeah.
And I still feel that way because I think those are really interesting characters. But I will say I do really like Henry and Jonesy. I think all the characters in this are pretty appealing. But I do agree with you that I feel like he kind of loses interest in Pete and Beaver in ways.
Think mostly Pete. I think Pete gets the short shrift because his quirk is just alcoholism. He's just that's really his whole personality. Whereas Beaver is the funny one and he is sort of the offbeat alt cool one with his leather jacket and his jokes. And Pete is well, what's another ability I could give someone? Maybe finding lost things or finding directions.
And
plus he's an alcoholic and that's it.
That's it. Can run, and isn't he also a year younger? That's also this weird
That's
thing.
True. They do give him the chapter where we get to see that he feels very cool to be associated with the older boys. That's the most we get of Pete.
And I don't. Yeah, I mean, it kind of bothered me more this read than other times. I guess maybe I'm just a little more aware of the classism here than I used to be. Or probably what more likely, I used to be much more I identify with the Harvard graduate.
Sure,
what does Beaver end up doing? I guess they're both.
He's a carpenter.
Okay. I don't feel like the book is I don't think that Beaver's death and Pete's death is necessarily any advocating of killing off lower class elements or
no, it's as characters he doesn't give them the dignity and the grace that he gives Jonesy and Henry. I feel
like Pete definitely not, but I feel like that's maybe him working out I've got to kill the addicted part. Like, and like
I was gonna say what's also strange about him about Pete being such a, fairly two-dimensional character and being the alcoholic is that alcoholics are fucking interesting, number one. And
he
number
writes
two,
them so well.
He writes them really well, and he would know that. And it's like I feel like it's more like a subconscious thing. Like, I don't want to deal with this right now.
Yeah. I'm so undecided as to the deaths being disappointing, because I agree. Like, of course, we want Beaver in particular to be like present for more of the book because he's such an appealing, interesting character.
Yeah,
but there's something about those early deaths that grounds the book in a certain, not realism.
Anyone can.
It does this. Yes, anyone can die, and it does this reverse emotional hook for me where Beaver dies really early and we're sad because we've gotten like enough of a glimpse of him to really appreciate his presence. But because we keep going back to the past, back to remembering things, his death becomes more poignant even though it's already happened. It accumulates meaning in this sort of like reverse tragedy way where we're like, and he's dead and he's dead and he's dead, and we're learning all this stuff about him after it has happened. So he is still a bit of a presence as we go back into the memories. And so I think it's actually a really great way of pulling off the tragedy of an early death in the book, and I don't think I would change it. But I love Beaver.
It's Stan Uris, it's that same kind of,
it is like Stan Uris.
I love him too. It's like there's multiple times where he's like, but Henry was always the leader and he knew what to do, and Jonesy was the smart one. There's this repeated thing about like Jonesy and Henry were the real special ones. Like, we were kind of special, but like they were the real. Like,
a little bit of Lennon McCartney kind of thing,
Yeah, it's just like Beaver seems pretty fucking special.
Yeah, it's impossible for me not to read that and see Jason Lee too, who is somebody I just love.
Well, now I'm thinking of Beaver
as charming.
Now I'm thinking of Beaver as Ringo. So
totally.
Okay, I think that's all super interesting, and but like I think that those musings on death though, and death is this permeating thing throughout the book. Like, what I think is super interesting is how, like, Henry keeps saying, couldn't I have just killed myself in a simple suicide or whatever, instead of having to do this, like, this huge adventure throughout the book with all of it. But that's sort of what I think King is getting at, is this desire to survive and to find a certain amount of purpose. Like, because, this book is very much about pushing through the pain to find meaning. Like, when Henry is on the skis going through, the snow, as all of the animals are running and, like, all of this insane shit is happening, there is this like dogged sense of perseverance that I think is really appealing, and it clashes with that suicidal ideation in the book, but there's always something that's keeping him going and pushing through pain. And then Jonesy is obviously the same. I mean, oh, hello, sorry, my kitty is yelling. And so but like Jonesy too, like he could succumb to Mr. Gray, but he builds this sort of palace inside of his mind to protect himself. And then and then I think there has to do too with these captives at Goslin's, like forming this uprising, fighting against the military, the CIA operatives and all that, to fight against them. Like, throughout the book, there is this kind of driving sense of perseverance. Even Duddits, like, who is on death's door, like, kind of coming back and doing one last thing to help all of his friends. Like, there is this sense that everyone is sick, everyone is dying, everyone is struggling, everyone is doomed, but there's a nobility and there's a beauty in persevering and pushing through pain, pushing through fear of death, all of those things. So
I want to talk just a little more about the Henry and the suicide ideation thing, as someone who has had a few suicide attempts in my past. And, thank God it's not something I also have intrusive thoughts, but it's been, a blessing, right? That's not something I struggle with on any the scale that I used to. There's something about the way that Henry talks about it that doesn't ring quite right to me. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say like, oh, he got suicide wrong or anything. Everybody experiences stuff differently, but it's almost, and this is something that I think is real, which is that he's at one point, Underhill actually lectures Henry about like, what the fuck are you, some condescending like asshole?
Yeah.
Right? And like, I feel like that's how I kind of felt about Henry, like this sort of like he's having this like luxurious idea of suicide. Well, maybe I'll just kill myself. Maybe I'll do it this way. Maybe I'll do it that way. I feel like when you're in real psychic pain, there's an urgency to it.
Mm.
And that what happens in this is that Henry's disabused of his actually wanting to die by having death actually confront him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I don't want to say like he wasn't actually suicidal, but it does feel more like he was in this place of ennui, right? He was in this place of like, I just don't want to live, which is a little different than like wanting
active
to
suicidal
die.
ideation.
Yeah.
And it does take like, all right, you want to die, honey? You know, hey, motherfucker, you want to die? All right. Like, let's dance, let's die. And he's like, oh, actually, maybe not. You know?
Yeah.
And
it's that and like saving other people, right? Like he's like, I want to die, but like, ugh, I guess I have to be a hero. Like,
I guess I'm gonna be a hero now. Like, there's something I'm not sure how much I like Henry, really. You know, like Jonesy, I like.
Yeah,
I like that's someone I want to hang out with, but like Henry's kind of a prick.
Oh,
like,
I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, just look at him how he deals.
His attitude towards suicide is part of the reason I don't like him, is because he just has this whole like, oh, it's a decision I'm gonna make. What do I do it this way? Do it that way? And then he does the place where Underhill calls him on it is calls him being a condescending prick is when he talks about how this beautiful gift of the Dreamcatcher, our ability to communicate, and we saved, and I don't think he uses the retard, but like it's that. He has that thought, like the Josie Rinkhauer, like we used this awesome power to save someone who might not even have been, like he implies might not even been worth saving.
Yeah. Let me
it's a horrible thought,
right?
Like, it's really upsetting.
I have that quote right here because I thought that was interesting, because I think another and this is I think it's kind of a half-formed theme. It's something that I find very interesting, but this notion of like wasted potential is something.
And like what? Like Henry didn't waste his potential in some way? Like because he went to Harvard, I guess that means his potential wasn't wasted.
Well, it's funny
again,
because
you can go to Harvard and still waste your potential. That could have turned out to be not a great
I know several people.
You know, like I'm just not sure what, like, I mean, again, I think I want to be kind of careful about how I criticize this book because King was literally not in his right mind, right?
Yeah.
Like literally not full control
and potentially
of his
having similar thoughts himself. Like,
Yeah, exactly. So I want to talk about this wasted potential notion. In his tour piece, Grady Hendrix calls this book the anti-It. He says, whereas It was about 5 mildly psychic kids who perform a heroic act as children, then grow up, forget about it, and enjoy great success. Dreamcatcher is about 5 mildly psychic kids who perform a heroic act as children. Then they grow up and become enormous failures. I don't know if enormous failure is perhaps like relevant, but I do think that's an interesting notion because there is this sense of like they're obsessed with that thing they did when they were kids. They didn't forget about it like in It. They're like, we did a good thing once. Like we helped Duddits and then we helped this Josie person who, even though they bring up Josie like 30 times before they ever get to the actual story of what happened.
Makes you wonder if you've missed something.
I know. In the book. So, but here's the quote from Henry. So he understood something now. The images he associated with his depression and his growing certainty of suicide had been hiding another, more potent image all along, the Dreamcatcher. Hadn't that been the real source of his despair? The grandiosity of the Dreamcatcher concept coupled to the banality of the uses to which the concept had been put. Using Duddits to find Josie Rinkenhauer had been like discovering quantum physics and then using it to build a video game. Worse, discovering that was really all quantum physics was good for. Of course they had done a good thing. Without them, Josie Rinkhauer would have died in that pipe like a rat in a rain barrel. But then he says something like, oh, but we didn't save a Nobel Prize winner or something. Yeah. And I think that's what you're referring to, Anna. And so, but I think that there is this notion of like, we develop this sort of psychic bond with Duddits and we didn't use it. And there is this sense of, lost potential, of like fruitlessness, like all of this stuff about like what lives have we built and this kind of ennui that kind of permeates it. But I feel like that's sort of a half-formed idea because I'm not sure how that really ties, like, and that's just the thing is the Duddit stuff, the psychic stuff that developed around him. I don't feel like that stuff is really fully woven into the narrative.
It's such a shame because I love that passage you read. Like, I love the sort of like the banality of the usage of this magic thing. Yeah. Like, that's such an interesting idea, and it would be so haunting to know that you have this power. Well, he is wrong. The book does prove him
like,
wrong.
Let's just like be very clear. Like, that makes him a dick to think that. Like,
yeah, but it's still
not
interesting. Yeah. It's like,
I mean,
I
feel like it's so un-King-like though, in a way. Like, I think King is usually of the mind that like to save one life is an awesome thing.
I think
like,
the book does circle back around
right.
to think
agree.
that.
Yeah, I agree. It's just like this weird, like, I don't like you saved a life.
But I think that's where Henry's depression comes from, is because he can't see it that way, because he is kind of an asshole and he does view things through this privilege. Yeah. And I would,
but don't you think you would feel that way too? Like, it's not just that it's just that they didn't use it to do more than that thing. Like, that was obviously a good thing. But if I had psychic powers and could find missing children and only used it to find one missing child.
But that's not what he thinks. That's not the way he frames it. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but he's not framing it as like, gosh, we should have found more kids. It's like, oh, we used it to do this one not very good thing.
I feel like it's part of it is saying like, this is such a grand power, like we could have done so much more. Like,
I'm sorry to I just feel like it's very clear to me. It's very clear in that passage where he's just like, all we did was this one thing, yes, and it was not even that good a thing. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think I'm reading he's more of a dick than
I think he's definitely a dick, and I think he's sorting through. I think that's like his initial thought, but I agree with you too, Mel. I think it's like it's a really interesting character note and a thing to introduce into this world. But I think it says something to me about, it almost speaks to the half-formed nature of the Duddits relationship and what it represents, which is so not like, I think it's an idea. This is one of those things where in the CBS interview, the way that Bryant Gumbel talks to King about revising and rewriting, he says something about how handwriting, he's like, wasn't it difficult for you to like go back and change things? And King is basically like, well, I didn't go back and change anything massive. He's like, I definitely rewrite. But he's essentially saying, he goes, the story is the story. He's like, the beats follow in the path of the story I wanted to tell. Like, he didn't go back and rearrange or go crazy kind of messing with it. I think he kind of trusts the story as it goes. I think that's his method and why he writes so fast. But I think too, and his instincts are obviously very good in that regard. But in this case, I feel like he introduces so many things earlier on that he goes on to sort of contradict or because he introduces all these aliens and this virus, right? But then near the end of the book, he's like, well, the virus wouldn't do anything in this environment. The virus doesn't even work. And then the shit weasels, he's like, the shit weasels will die. Like, they're not going to work.
Even if they succeeded with their grand reservoir plan, like it wouldn't have actually taken over the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is super
so they weren't really heroes. Poor Owen.
Well, yeah, and that's, I think, the thing that I feel like I see King straining to sort of like he has this huge bundle of story and he's trying to connect all the dots, and he introduces this Duddits character who I think early on he thought was going to be a major part of the story, and he does play a role in the ending, but it's honestly something that could have been swapped in for almost anything else, because he basically helps communicate with Jonesy. Henry could have done that just as easy. And so I think that's because he says so many times in the early book, like, oh, as kids, we did this great thing. We helped this kid. Josie Rinkenhauer. But then all that stuff just keeps getting pushed back. And these flashbacks that we get of them as kids with Duddits, none of them feel that illuminating, do they? Like, I never felt like I learned more character stuff, but I felt like it wasn't contributing to the story that we were dealing with. The Greys, the military, the shitweasels, all this stuff. It felt oddly disconnected.
It feels illuminating emotionally. It feels illuminating in the sense that we need to know about the bond that these kids share. I agree that Duddits is superfluous and that King was like, I need a magical mentally
character.
Disabled savant. But
and the other thing I point is that he seems to overvalue the idea that these normal kids would be friends with the special kid. Like, he treats that as like a cool thing that they did. Do you see how they were friends?
Almost like a heroic act
with the Down syndrome kid. They were like genuinely friends with him. Genuinely friends with the Down syndrome kid. Oh my God, what heroes!
Oh yeah.
Like,
I have a lot of thoughts, especially because I just talked to Scott Woods about this magical Negro trope that King tends to go back to, and this feels very much like it. But
you can hear that on our Patreon, patreon.com/Barons. Check it out.
But I like the idea of wasted potential. I think is something I hadn't really thought about, but that's kind of what I feel like I take from this is like I walk away from this book and I think, what was the point? You know, like what is this really about? And I wonder if that is King in the midst of all of this pain, kind of thinking about his body breaking down, and what if I never get back to who I was? Like, what has my life been about, you know? And looking at the highs, like going back to Derry and going back to like things he finds strengths, but also like what am I taking forward, or what am I going to leave behind, you know? And I don't think he really finds a concrete answer there, as much as I don't think he really finds a concrete answer to the story in a lot of ways, you know? Like we walk away with a lot of questions about it. So
yeah, like if I'm being honest, thematically, what I pull from this, it's so enriched by knowing, at least to some degree, the mindset that he was in when he wrote it. You know,
yes,
I think looking at this book as his first post-accident novel contributes more to it than if you read it without that context. Because for me, this is very much like a body horror book in the sense of you know, because one of the other themes I have down here is the post-accident trauma of like my body being alien to me. Like Jonesy has a part where he says he looks in the mirror and he catches a ghost of his reflection in the window looking into the operating room. He is not Jonesy anymore, not human anymore. His skin is gray and his eyes are black bulbs staring out of his noseless face. He has become one of them. Like just becoming an alien inside of your own body, which has become unfamiliar to you. These are the notions that I find most effective, and just the musings on death and near death and those things, and this idea of you know, a cancerous growth inside of you. These are all things that, and he's also, you know, in his 50s when he wrote this. So I think he was reckoning with that too. It wasn't just the accident, but it was just getting older, and it was the fear of sickness and all of these things that could come at any minute. Those are the things that I think I really take away thematically from this book. So I agree with you, Jen, in that regard. I think that there's all these other ideas that get tossed around that I think are cool, and it makes for an entertaining read, but I don't think a lot of that stuff really connects in the same way.
I agree that's what I find the most interesting about this book. As a person who doesn't like love sci-fi as much, you know, but I found it really interesting to like connect with just, this is a person who is in a lot of pain and who is very angry. And there's an ugliness to this book that I find off-putting, but I also find, and I think that's why I didn't like it the first time, is because it was just so hard for me to keep reading some of the things that he's writing. But this time when I try to imagine the mental state he's in, and part of why I love how prolific he is he gives us so much text to do that. That's what I find the most interesting, is just this is a person in the midst of a physical recovery that is just tearing him apart.
So I guess I don't think the book completely pulls this off, but it did resonate with me. I think what it's trying to do that we aren't fully connecting with is that it's the very mundane human pleasures and pains that throw up the greatest conflicts and roadblocks, but also the greatest delights in the book. For me, it is a book about pettiness being one side of a coin. Grudges, it's the petty things. It's like grudges, bacon, people are petty. Pettiness is one side of the coin. And if pettiness is sweating the small stuff and making mountains out of molehills and losing our cool over that, then the other side is exulting in the small stuff and making so much meaning out of small connections and forming that dream catcher out of these moments. The flip side of pettiness is amplifying small joys into mantras like no bounce, no play, and SSDD, and the friendships that we have as kids. I think that's what it's trying to do. And like, it got me there at points, and I think I really enjoyed those points. But I agree that it seems to be a theme that runs very sporadically throughout the book and sort of tries to bring it home, whether or not we think that's successful by the end. And especially with the nature of Duddits muddying everything, it can be hard to get there. But I really appreciated the pettiness versus making meaning coin that I saw flipping throughout the book.
I like that a lot, Mel. And I think it speaks to I think what you're getting at is where I think it's not perhaps as fully formed is that with these four main characters, I'm more drawn to them as individuals than I am as a group, because I never fully buy the connection between all of them. It's there. I don't dislike it. I don't think it's just, but it's not on the level of the Losers Club in it, right? It's like,
and it's always going to, if you've read it, you're always going to be like, oh, a group of friends from Derry that are
exactly. Yeah. But that's the
And-
thing
and
is
then-
I find them just so much more interesting as individuals, and I never quite buy the bond between them. And it's not that I'm resisting that, it's just that we also never see all of them together as adults. Like
Yeah,
That's right.
it's a
Literally,
little
we
strange.
yeah.
But that's, I think I'm also feeling like the personal space that I'm coming to this from is like, as an adult in her 30s now, it really is hard to maintain connections with your friends.
Yeah.
And like that is something you have to work at and cultivate. And they sort of have this nostalgic factor throughout where they're like, these are the best times of my life. And yet we don't know that this one friend of ours is dying. And yet we don't know like what our friends are up to. We can only kind of make this happen once a year.
Right.
And so clinging to those memories is like somehow the most work you can do. And it's very sad.
Yeah, and there's a quote from King, Mel, I think that speaks somewhat to what you're discussing, which is he said, looking back at my own childhood, my friends and I were convinced we would all be big deals someday. We felt like heroes, like kings of our own small world. Little by little, those dreams fade away into what becomes an ordinary life. You wind up selling cars, teaching school. Your friends remain touchstones, though, because with them, you relive when you felt like kings of the universe. And he was saying that about this book. And so I think that's sort of the vibe he wanted to capture with these four friends, or I guess five if you include Duddits. But again, yeah, I think I agree with you in that it's there and it's affecting, but it's not there enough to have that emotional impact as it does in, say, you know, It. Or
Yeah, I'm being
so.
very forgiving.
Yeah,
this
I
book.
think so.
Jen said something that really helped me kind of make sense of how I feel about this book, actually, which is that this is an angry
Yeah,
king, which I don't think we see that much of, especially
Yeah.
after he gets sober,
yeah,
right?
100%.
He has one of the things I think we've talked about on the show before when I've been on is that generally one of the reasons I love him so much is that he has so much grace for people,
Mhm.
right? He has cardboard villains, but for the most part, like he cares, like he believes in, I think, again, for the most part, a theme that you normally see in King is like the anti-Henry idea, which is that every life is like a joyous creation.
Yes.
You know, like every life is like everyone has this potential to do cool stuff, you know? And in here we're seeing the insecurities around that and kind of a selfishness about it too, which I think you hit the nail on the head, Jen, with like, at least I'm still smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
At least I'm still a best-selling author. Like at least like, you know, and I think that's one of the reasons why the stuff with Duddits like has leaves such a bad taste in people's mouths, as it were, because it's like, I'm not that, you know,
Yeah.
what? I'm not, I'm super smart.
Yeah.
But do you
Right?
think it is trying to kind of combat that by the end? Like, I think the fact that the aliens aren't going to actually take over the world, but they're still heroes because they're saving souls in Boston in the same way that, or like in the East Coast, in the same way that Henry is like, we need to try to save these like 200, 300 people. Like, I think it's aware of the meanness and trying,
Yeah.
maybe not successfully for us
Yeah,
to combat
think-
it. Like,
I think Owen's the best example, honestly. Like I said, I think he's actually, now that I'm sort of thinking about it, I didn't realize how much I kind of liked him as a character.
Mhm.
Like
his
it's
weird like kinky compulsions and like,
well, yeah, and like how he's complicated and
He's
he
so
doesn't
weird,
fully
yeah.
redeem himself. Like he's not totally a good guy, and he did do this horrible thing, you know.
Yeah.
And he's ready to go shoot Jonesy. Like he's like, I'm not going to try to say, like, I'm glad Henry's passed out. He might try to make me save his friend, you know.
Mhm.
Like this is easy for me.
and he's committed atrocities.
And he's and he has committed atrocities. And I think that's sort of like the redeeming character in the book in a weird way, right? Because like this person who has done terrible things, you know,
Yeah.
does actually wind up being, he actually does
And
shoot the
that's why
weasel.
I think this book should be
Yeah.
titled Gray.
Ooh. That would have been a good title.
I see what you did there.
I like that.
Sorry.
Well, speaking of titles, I guess
Sympathy
like,
for the Gray Boys.
Yeah. God,
Let's-
he loves that song.
Oh boy.
He's like, did you know that I know the song Sympathy for the Devil?
Right.
I mean,
I-
I of course thought of the Stand miniseries when Randall Flagg introduces himself as,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
pleased to meet you. Perhaps you know my, or, yeah. So, okay. Last thing in the hook here. What is a Dreamcatcher? What is it in the context of this book? I mean, I think we all know what a Dreamcatcher is to some degree. Native American symbol designed to catch any harm that might
Is it
be
a
in the
real
air.
thing?
I mean, it was a native. Yeah, I mean, it has like roots
What-
in
Okay, it's an indigenous
I don't
culture.
think we can know how real of a
Okay.
thing
Yeah,
it
I
was.
mean, it's
been
right.
so
from the research I did. I mean, that it's
Okay.
supposed to catch bad dreams.
All right. Yes, that is when you buy them in gift shops. That is what they say.
Yes,
that
exactly.
They do.
I know.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's very much a sort of pan-Indian, Americanized sort of notion of what the
Natives.
Dreamcatcher is. But I think out of the definitions I was reading of it, one of the more modern definitions is that it's represents a shared symbol of hope and healing. And so I guess I was like, well, that seems to be how King was looking at it here. Like for me, the Dreamcatcher represents this bond and this sense of, purity, I guess, amongst these friends that binds them together. And but I have to say, that metaphor didn't quite always work for me. Like when they say Duddits is the Dreamcatcher and all this stuff, I have a little bit of trouble sort of wrapping my brain around that. Like, does it just mean their shared bond?
I don't think it's consistent. Like for me,
Yeah.
it meant like the coincidences and moments that form a continuity in the way that like all of our little interactions form a web. But then, yeah, you're right. Like later, it's like it's their bond, or it's like Duddits is the Dreamcatcher. I really feel if he pulled anything out of his ass, it's like this title and the significance of this object, which is so, again, sporadically stuck throughout the book that it doesn't hold a lot of weight.
Pete's dad have one.
I think it was Beaver's dad that had
Beaver's
it.
dad.
Yeah.
Clarendon. So Clarendon.
He was probably
right.
just like, it's what you put up in a lodge, right?
And
Right.
also, it's a funny insistence that it's a Navajo rug, but then it's like a dream catcher. Like, I don't know. Like, and then they also have like Indian, whatever. It was decorated by Beaver's dad.
It's like, how he talks about no bounce, no play, like not even really meaning anything. It's just
Yeah.
something they kind of say, that's kind of how I feel like the Dreamcatcher reference is. It's like, and it's funny, I read this book and it reminds me so much of The Regulators and just kind of the feel of it that I wonder, like, this feels
Special
like
kid.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that. This feels like a Bachman book that is trying to be a King book, and I wonder if the Dreamcatcher element is like him trying to kind of inject some hope.
It's like
It's a
forced
King book trying to
alternative.
be a Bachman book, actually.
Yeah.
And actually, now that you mention it, it's the mean king, right?
Yeah,
Bachman
it's like
is the
that mean
king.
really wanting to come
He's like
through.
grappling with that side of his inclinations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it does seem like Tabby was like no to cancer, and then he was like, well, I need to find this like crazy hopeful anti-cancer alternative, and it didn't.
Right.
It wasn't built into the book, like it
Right.
wasn't already there.
Well, and
I
connecting
agree.
it to Duddits just kind of adds another element of Duddits' kind of failure for me as a character with humanity, that kind of just bugs me.
Yeah.
That
I mean,
I'm
the
sure
thing
we'll
is,
have more to say about.
like, I feel like I remember when I first read the book thinking you could have done this book without Duddits. And then that was hammered home for me on this reread. Like, you really don't need that character. And considering it's such a problematic character, it's like, I mean, even at that time, I think even at the time I was like, what are you
Yeah,
doing?
this is 2001.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like,
This
and then
is
the
like the
movie-
sewer scene in It for me. It's
Yeah.
like, how did...
In the movie, it's really rough too because they cast like Donnie Wahlberg in the role, and it's like Donnie Wahlberg's not a bad actor, but it's just like it's a rough watch.
It's a rough
Hashtag
go.
hottest new kid.
I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. Gonna pop some popcorn.
Yeah,
I just
I haven't
like
seen it. Yeah, I'm excited.
I'm a huge Jason Lee fan. I mean, it's going to
The
be
cast is
also
incredible.
Tom Jane, man.
I know.
was
Oh,
like,
man.
I looked at it.
Timothy
Tom Jane,
Oliphant.
Tim Oliphant,
Damian Lewis?
Damian
Like,
Lewis, yeah.
lots of like
God.
low key smart hot guys, right?
Yeah.
Like it's Damian Lewis though he's Henry, right?
He's Jonesy.
Oh,
Yeah, Tom
interesting.
Jane is Henry, which is funny because Tom
That's
Jane's
funny.
he's such a
He's-
manly man,
and he's such a kind of doofus also
I know.
in a very appealing way,
Yeah.
right? But anyway, that's funny.
But yeah, so I think we can all agree the Dreamcatcher doesn't quite come together for us, which was, and I remember trying to really actively be like, because I remember feeling that when I first read the book, I was like, how does, like, what is the Dreamcatcher in the world of this book? And I think it does create some cool imagery, like the notion of Jonesy leaving the prison of his mind via sort of this, the expanse of the Dreamcatcher and like him and Henry meeting in that sort of, imagined space is a really cool notion. And I love that in the book, but that's really all that works for me in that regard. And it's funny because it reminds me of when we reviewed the Hearts in Atlantis movie. Hearts in Atlantis is obviously the name of another story in that collection, but the movie is an adaptation of Low Men in Yellow Coats. So there's nothing about Hearts in Atlantis in Low Men in Yellow Coats. So in the movie adaptation, William Goldman like has a line where he kind of just shoehorns in this line in the middle of the movie of Anthony Hopkins being like, childhood, it's like Hearts in Atlantis. Something like that. It's like, and it's
like, well, he's got to say it. It's
I know. It's so funny. And we laugh about it in the episode because it's kind of like, they had to like work that in there to justify the title. And I almost feel that way about
it. It's not like Hearts in Atlantis is such a more saleable title than Low Men in Yellow Coats.
Yeah, right. Like they both mean nothing.
Yeah. I told you Gray is a title though. I think that's really interesting, and it like evokes this like haziness that I feel like his mind was kind of in. So.
Yeah,
I should have been consulted.
Also, I know. Also, my favorite.
Why didn't they ask 11-year-old Mel Castle?
I don't know. I don't know why they did. Have I told you that going to any movie in theaters, my dad would always lean over when they said the name of the movie as part of the dialogue. He would just lean over in my ear and be like, "Title of the film." now I do it.
I always see Peter Griffin saying, "You said the name of the movie."
Yeah,
I did a community theater production of "You Can't Take It With You" many years ago.
I was in that.
Oh, nice! And the guy who played the grandpa, he says "You can't take it with you" in it, and he would always turn to the audience and say it, and the director had to be like, Jim, stop looking at the audience when you say that line. I'm begging you. It was so funny. Okay, cool. Let's move on and just talk briefly, because I think this could actually be an interesting section with this book, is structure and format.
Look at me. Look at me, teacher.
Welcome to Structure and Format, the part of the podcast where we talk about structure and format. This is an interesting book in that it seems relatively straightforward, but it also hops around in time, and there's a lot of chapters when we get the telepathy, I think, changes the fabric of the prose in this a little bit, because we get these sections where I guess you're talking about intrusive thoughts, but it's like these intrusive speeches and these intrusive lines of dialogue will sort of end and up in somebody's head, and it'll be stuff we haven't even heard yet. The scene where Pete is alone in the wilderness, he begins hearing Kurtz's speech that he gives before they slaughter all the Greys. He's hearing that like 50 pages before Kurtz actually utters it. And I know it's because these things are happening simultaneously, but for me, I found that pretty disorienting. How did you guys respond to those moments?
I dig it.
You dig it?
I dig it.
I didn't find it that part disorienting. I actually thought the Guardian review was more on target about how the last part of the book is really confusing. I mean, again, slowest car chase. I mean, it's hard to pull off a car chase in a book to begin with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But to have it be one where they're Humvees going 40 miles an hour in a snowstorm.
And there's 3 cars, and we're always checking in with all 3 cars.
And all 3 cars, someone in each car knows where the other car is. And then also once someone is lying about where the car is, it's really hard to keep track of. I remember it being much more difficult the first time I read it, though, in terms of that last section. This section, maybe it's also because I did literally read like half the book in 8 hours yesterday. So it was a bit easier to keep track of, but I thought actually some of the telepathy stuff was pretty cool. Actually, I thought it was done pretty well. One of you, I think Mel, you said the first part of the book is actually pretty good, right? Like for you.
I think it was Randall, but I agree.
Right. Yeah. And I agree. I think, they're interesting to talk about, but if we're talking about structure, the part that I would say I have trouble with is a little bit with the kind of like somewhat random going back into their childhood and then coming back out of it. Yeah. Like it happens. It's woven through that first part. It's a little jarring for me every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also the tense switches, it's in present tense whenever it goes into the past, which, and I guess like, the implication there is like, memory exists presently, like in our minds, and we're reliving it. But I don't know. There was something about it that felt sort of inorganic to me. And I have to say, like, it didn't feel, it's not like an It where it feels like everything flows so beautifully into each other, like the flashbacks in the present time. I felt like there was a demarcation almost in between the present story and the flashbacks. And the flashbacks, I think that it's contributed to by the fact that I never felt like I got that much from the flashbacks. That like emotionally, yes, I agree with you on that, Mel. Like the bond is there, but to me, it always felt somewhat superfluous.
It's weird that we actually maybe even get more of that emotional resonance, not from the flashbacks that are in scene, that are experienced, but from the present characters' thoughts about the past.
Yeah.
Where they're like, it was great when this happened, and we're not actually in a flashback.
I agree.
I do think I just love how King does this. I love how he does telepathy, and I love how he does nonlinear time, and I love how Owen kind of starts to like bleed through sometimes into these memories. And
Yeah.
he's just kind of a master at that. And it's why I also say this is a book. It's hard to adapt into a movie. You cannot capture any of that stuff. Like the telepathy stuff in particular is extremely Kingian.
Yeah.
Kingian to me. And I love that everyone just starts experiencing low grade mind reading, and that the text can portray that with the sort of grammatically weird, incomplete, italicized interruptions. It conveys it so well. You really get a feel for what it would be like.
Yeah, I do really enjoy when King writes telepathy, and I think Dr. Sleep is maybe one of my favorite kind of examples of that. And here it feels kind of like it's like a half form, a mix between Dr. Sleep and It. And what I love about It is how clearly structured it is. And this book feels like it in you know, of course they go to Derry and it's four friends, but also it's just big. It's really sprawling, and there are a lot of characters. And I found myself really losing focus of who was talking and what exactly was going on. And I think because it goes so kind of fluidly throughout, and also maybe because I was listening to it, but I have a really hard time kind of keeping track of what was going on and who was talking. I think partly because, like we said, a lot of the characters feel like King, and so they kind of merge together.
It really demands your attention, and it makes sense.
It does.
Like, as a kid, like I couldn't quite grasp it.
I think that's a good way. Yeah, I think it's a good way to put it, is just, and this is what one of the reviews said too, is like, this book sort of demands you read it carefully.
Yes.
Because I think perhaps, and that may be why I got disoriented, was because I think I was trying to fly through certain chapters, and then I was just like, wait, what? Why is this, everything is italics? And so it's definitely cool, but I think the telepathy, he gets so in the weeds with it sometimes, because like sometimes the telepathy is stronger, sometimes it's weaker, sometimes people have it, sometimes people don't. And it's like, like there's humor to be derived from it as well, which I love, is like Owen breaking into Henry's thoughts, you know, like the section we read earlier about Henry reckoning with whether they wasted this power that they had. That section ends with Owen being like, dude, can you focus? You know, like,
right. Oh, and also telling him he's being a dick too.
Like,
he's like, what are you? You know.
Also, there's something a little sexual about it. I know that when they're kids, it's referred to as the ecstasy of their joining. But even with Owen and Henry, there is this like shared pleasure that they take in linking minds and being like, there's the segment where Henry's like, or Owen is like, say it to me again. Like, what are we going to be? And he's like, heroes. It's like very romantic. Like, I'm not trying to queer the text or anything. I don't think there's like any intentional homoerotic subtext there, but the melding of the minds and him being like, say it to me again is like a notable moment for me.
Yeah, that's like a weirdly, I actually really love that relationship, like the Henry Owen thing. It's like, I don't know, there's something very buddy movie about it, like road movie about it, that I just enjoy quite a bit. Yeah.
Well, and the thing that I think frustrated me the most the first time I read it, and this time I knew I was going to be talking about it, so I was like, am intentionally reading it, looking for specific things. But the first time, part of the reason I kept losing track, and I have essentially no memory of the story from the first time I read it, except for Duddits, it's because it kept pissing me off, and it kept making me not want to engage closely with the text. Like every time I would become invested in the story, it would say something that I found offensive, and then it would take me out, you know? And I feel like that comes through like over and over and over and over again. So that's part of how I was having a hard time with it. Whereas this read, I was like, okay, well, that's going to go in this column and that's going to go in that column.
Yeah.
Right.
I know it helps you compartmentalize, I think, when you read
It does,
this
yeah.
lens.
On the sexting the text tip, there is at the end, Jonesy observes he's the only man who knows what it's like to feel raped.
Yep.
Oh.
Spoiler for my misery section. I was like, come on.
Yeah.
Also, like in the last like 3 pages or something, it's like we're
I know.
gonna be left with that thought.
Yeah.
I know. It is on the
Thanks,
last page.
Steve.
Yeah.
Okay, on that note, let's hop on over to our heroes and villains sections and talk a little bit more about them.
I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown. Welcome to the Losers Club, asshole!
We sort of did a lot of this.
Oh, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make us go through every character. I just want, like, perhaps this is just a section where we can talk it through anything we haven't yet. Like, what
Okay.
characters, you know, like
Roberta.
for me, I just want to say that the first 4, the kind of 4 vignettes that kick off the book with Beaver, Pete, Henry, and Jonesy it might be some of my favorite King writing ever. And that's not hyperbole. Like, I think that he captures the melancholy of it and the sort of like comfort that you find in old friends is something that it just breaks my heart. And it made me instantly like be interested in these characters like this. And the scene with Beaver is so simple. It's just him like at the bar with some guys, and this guy is lying about banging some groupie, and he's can sense in his head, like telepathy wise, he's like, oh, he's making this up. This was the actual story. And it just depresses him. And he just calls like Henry, I think. And they just kind of have like hey man, like same shit, different day, you know? And it's like this simple, elegant sort of like affirmation of friendship and comfort, but it really captures, I think, sort of middle-aged dude ennui in a way that I can relate to because I'm, you know, of that age. And so it's but like, and then the Pete story, I think, is because we don't get as much with him later on. I think that first section where he helps the woman find her car keys and then like asks her on a date, and then she stands him up and he watches her car drive by the restaurant where he wanted to
I
meet
love
her.
that scene.
It's so sad.
And when he
Yeah.
knows that she's not going to meet him, and
Right.
he's just like, I'm going to keep play acting this scene anyway. Like,
I know.
Mhm.
And he's just pounding drinks, and the guy and like the bartenders like pity him in their own way. And it's like, it's such a great portrait, I think, of just despondent alcoholism. And
Then
like,
he says, I'm gonna get a sloppy blowjob from this chick.
Yeah.
I believe. And then also Henry has to remind us about how much Stephen King hates fat
Oh my
people.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. That
That's
Like-
a rough
That's,
section.
that's
but-
when you say it's some of King's best writing. I agree. The 2 scenes you have just named. Yes.
The other ones, sure. I agree with you, but I think that I just love this setup, and I love the kind of like this intro to character for me. It just worked extremely well. And yeah, as much as like it's unfortunate that he has to frame that whole Henry sequence through this sort of, you know, repulsion of fatness, which is, you know, very common in his work, as we've discussed. I still think the scene is interesting in setting up that Henry is a bit of a dickbag, and he is somebody whose depression is sort of eclipsing his humanity in a lot of ways. And then yeah, the Jonesy scene, I think the way that scene he has with the student who is cheating, I think is like a really interesting, cool, humanistic portrait that helps set up his own sense of telepathy. And we get that sense, like their, you know, whatever their gift is, we get in each of those scenes in ways that I think are really well done. But I just remember I was just rereading those and I was like, damn, like this is just great. And yeah, maybe I'm overdoing it and saying it's some of his best writing, but I think it's something that I just personally really reacted to very strongly, especially coming off the intro, which was like all of the newspaper headlines about the alien sightings.
so many.
I love that.
I just
Yeah.
couldn't. I was like, is there a reason I'm reading these? Is
I
there
know.
like
I think for me, I just love it because I gobble that stuff up. You know, like I love alien
Was there-
stories. Yeah.
but seriously, like what was it supposed to add? Like
Oh, I
did I
think
miss
it was
something
supposed to
by
add-
skipping ahead?
There's history to like
Yeah.
this particular
Oh.
brand of alien that goes back like past Roswell and all this shit.
There was
like,
so many. It was
I
like
know.
it was just like pages and pages of like headlines that were like, anyway, sorry, I don't need to complain.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I think that was just setting up. And, you know, Kurt says that too. He's like, these people these aliens have been visiting us for 50 years or whatever. And, you know, like they've been planning for this. This is their Super Bowl, I think he says. So it's, which is just kind of funny because they're like literally these dying like liquid sacks that are wandering off this crashed spaceship. But yeah. But I thought that was a cool opening, just for me personally, as someone who loves like alien tabloid shit. I think it was really cool. But yeah, so I think character-wise, you get some of the best character moments, I think, in those 4 sections. And I think that those specifically each spoke to me in really interesting ways. But yeah, what other characters have we perhaps not talked about very much that you thought were worthy?
I want to talk about Kurtz.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah.
He's not interesting and is an archetype, but also
I like Kurtz.
King knows that he's an archetype, and even Kurtz knows that he's an archetype.
Yeah, he does know he's an archetype.
His name Kurtz.
Yeah,
I love
Kurtz.
Exactly, and he did it himself. And I love this section on 404 for me that is in a reference to Haunting of Hill House, because it starts dreamless since childhood and thus unsane. Kurtz woke as he always did. At one moment nowhere, at the next completely awake and cognizant of his surroundings. So I love anytime King goes Hill House, I'm like, this is great. But then further down the page, it has this great paragraph, which I think is the most interesting look at Kurtz. Kurtz shucked his gray workout shorts and stood naked in front of the mirror on the bedroom door, letting his eyes go up from his feet where the first snarls of purple veins were beginning to show, to the crown of his head where his graying hair stood up in a sleep tussle. He was 60, but not looking too bad. Those busted veins on the sides of his feet were the worst of it. Had a hell of a good crank on him, too, although he had never made much use of it. Women were, for the most part, vile creatures incapable of loyalty. They drained a man. In his secret, unsane heart, where even his madness was starched and pressed and fundamentally not very interesting, Kurtz believed all sex was foobar. Even when it was done for procreation, the result was usually a brain-equipped tumor, not much different from the shit weasels. I love that we get just this a little bit into one more facet of his madness and one more facet of his inhumanity, which is like, of course, he thinks bodies are like disgusting. And of course, he thinks women are disgusting. And I love that he acknowledges like he has this brand of madness that is actually pretty rigid and like not incredibly deep. It is the madness of like a simple man with simple egotistic desires. I think this book suffers from an overabundance of references. King is just like peppering them so liberally. And Kurtz himself is like one big walking reference. But he's fun, right? He's fun.
Yeah, I agree. I was like, I think he's one of the better inventions of the book. Like
I think for me, his simplicity sometimes doesn't feel in keeping with the rest of the characters.
I agree with that.
He's tonally just a different person.
I suppose, although I was going to say, like, I mean, something that I would almost put in Cemetery is the scene where they bring the cook to his trailer. Yeah. And I had forgotten what I genuinely didn't know what was going to happen. And what actually winds up happening, it's not that scary, right? But there's like a tension in that where like, I'm like, he is crazy. Like this guy is crazy. And when he does shoot the guy's foot, and Perlmutter has this like moment of like, oh
yeah, I have a
dealing
section
with.
from that scene right here because I wanted to read it because I love this description. Kurtz bared his teeth in a brief smile of such brutally satiric intensity that Perlmutter felt a little like screaming.
Yeah.
Tall and stoop-shouldered, Kurtz had the build of a bureaucrat, yet something about him was terrible. I just love that. Like there is like he's so evil that he's just
something
terrible.
About him was terrible.
Yeah.
And like he can't, I love it because he goes, you saw some of it in his eyes, sensed some of it in the still prim way he held his hands in front of him. But those weren't the things that made him scary. That made the men call him old creepy Kurtz. Perlmutter didn't know exactly what the really scary thing was, and he didn't want to know. I just kind of love that. Like this man who just exudes, like radiates, like, you know, malevolence. It's such a fun, evil character. And I think the casting of Morgan Freeman as that is like kind of inspired.
Yeah, I agree.
Because he always would play these sort of, you know, kindly characters, I think, in a lot of stuff. But he exudes such gravitas that I think it's really smart casting. And it was very hard for me not to picture Morgan Freeman as I was reading this. But
I was totally picturing the guy in Full Metal Jacket.
Arlie Ermey? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And it could be because I've just watched a bunch of Texas Chainsaw Massacre remakes.
I had Donald Sutherland in my head for some reason.
Oh, yeah. Really. That's good casting, too. Yeah. I love that.
I wanted to say I actually liked Roberta, Duddit's mom.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, she's not like incredibly well drawn or anything, but like my heart hurt. Like as terrible as the Duddit stuff is, kind of like when she says goodbye to him, like it really hurt me for some reason. Like I was like, yeah, this is like, let's get out of here, guys. Like this goodbye is going way too long because I'm having trouble with it.
Yeah.
You know?
It's also lovely when it's revealed that of course they had their own psychic relationship. It like gives her a little bit more of a story for a split second, and like that she knew so much about like what these boys were doing, and like they didn't know how much she knew, and that she had her own special thing with her son. I mean, yeah, we're gonna get into like the whole Duddits problem later,
the
but
problem of
The
Duddits.
Duddits problem.
Roberta, yeah, you can't help but like her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
she
this
feels
book too,
human in a way that Duddits does not. You know?
Yes.
Yeah, this book too has a lot of fun. I mean, one of the pleasures of reading King is these one chapter characters, right? These guys that kind of pop out. And I think that there's some fun ones here. Like the guy that's driving the van and then stabs his eye out because Jonesy like takes over for him.
From Minnesota.
Yeah. The guy in the
Knows how
general
to drive.
store who jams his thumb up. Yeah, the guy in the general store who jams his thumb up his nose or whatever. Like those scenes are really fun for me. I've always enjoyed that about King, is just these like one-off sketches that create these like really fun little characters. But like Jen, you mentioned the meanness of this book, and that is actually a word King used to describe this book as well. Personally, he used it in the CBS interview. He says it's a very mean book. He says it's a very scary book. Like King calls it scary often, which is fun. And but I think you see some of that in those scenes, the cruel way that he treats some of these characters. Like I can feel like in other books, he perhaps would not have killed the guy who the good driver character, maybe would have just stranded him or something and done something more like an existential sort of terror at his car being taken over. And he did give that grace to the store owner, the guy who almost jammed his thumb up into his brain, but he also was like completely wrecked mentally by that entire experience. But I just love those scenes, and that's the thing, is there's a lot of humor in this book that not even really comes from the flatulence. Like the flatulence is actually pretty scary. The humor really comes from that dynamic between Jonesy and Mr. Gray, and Mr. Gray sort of learning emotions, like you were talking about earlier, Anna, like this sort of growing awareness of what it is to have emotions. And but then also the conflict between, this kind of weird Stockholm-esque relationship between Mr. Gray and Jonesy, where they almost become like they have to work together in their own way. I think that's super fun, but you get a lot of that with the minor characters too. Like even Perlmutter, who's like a very fun archetype to throw inside the CIA apparatus,
The thing that I laughed at the store owner chapter, honestly, was when Mr. Gray leaves a 20% tip.
Yeah.
He's like, this is more, this is better.
For the store, because the whole thing about it is like he doesn't understand tipping, he doesn't understand, and also just like try to one up Jonesy, like see.
Yeah, and Jonesy's just like, please don't kill him, because it's just natural for Mr. Gray to be like, oh, I'm gonna kill this guy,
Well, to enjoy, and also the way he defines like bacon and murder to be equally pleasurable.
Yes.
Flesh. Yeah. He talks about him as like a vampire discovering like pleasure.
The bacon thing, I don't know. I mean, we've been through a bacon phase in popular culture since this book was written.
Yep.
But
which is funny.
Which is funny, but for some reason, like I still, maybe that makes it funnier to me. I don't know. Like I don't remember laughing as much at the bacon thing as I did this, but this time
again, this is like Animorphs took a lot from this book. Or I don't know when those started publishing. There's an alien that becomes human and is entranced by taste, cinnamon buns in particular, and it's very similar.
Should have taken him. He probably could have like had derailed the whole plan by taking him to Cinnabon.
Yeah.
Like.
I just want to touch once more on Pete, because even though I mentioned him earlier and how good his intro is, but I do think the chapters where he's such an alcoholic that he has to go back to the car for the beer. Yeah. That to me is, yeah. And it's just such an interesting, it's a good character moment, even though like Mel, you kind of said like so much of Pete's character
is
alcoholic. And, but I do think that it does give us this really cool opportunity to spend time in his mind, and just this sad scene, like when he does get the beer and then he starts writing like Duddits' name in the snow, like as he's sitting there with the beer, and then he forgets like all the other things he went there for because he just got or like the gun, like he just got the beer, and then walks back, and it gives time for the the shit weasel to leave that other woman. But then he gets that like heroic scene where he does kind of defeat the shit weasel, which is a fun moment for him. But I remember loving those scenes when I was young and loving it now again, just because I think King does write alcoholics with this like really beautiful sense of empathy, but also without softening the behavior, or softening the addiction.
Yeah.
And also Pete's kind of growing awareness that he knows he's an alcoholic and he knows he's going to have to get help for this eventually was, to me, like a really, I don't know, powerful and sad kind of character. Like, I just found Pete to be really sad because he's also the guy who wanted to be an astronaut when he grew up, and now he sells cars, and just somebody who never really kind of achieved whatever it was he wanted to do, and now he kind of just, his days are just kind of spiraling down. And I guess I just find a lot of tragedy. And then he dies in such like a really depressing way, like he gets his head crushed in by the virus. It's a cool scene and I think it works overall. But yeah, it's like I find him to be such a tragic character. Like he never really kind of gets any sort of transcendence or anything. Yeah.
And also they mentioned the irony, but like he wanted to be an astronaut and
gets killed by an alien.
He finally gets to meet aliens. I also, although he doesn't really have that much I guess I didn't remember exactly how he died. So at first when he dies, being crushed by it sounds like he really dies being crushed by the top of the shed, right? Or almost dies. Sorry. Like that's, he really gets injured when the lean-to collapses on him.
Yeah. He's fucked up.
And he gets his fingers bit off by the
he gets his fingers bit off. There is a point when I was like, oh, he's not even really going to have any interaction with the aliens, but then he does. And it's just not good. I like that scene too. Like I have walked in a snowstorm to get alcohol.
Yeah.
Myself. It is a very powerful draw. And that scene when he's in the it's both realistic feeling for me, but also that reverie he has is also nice. Like he's going back to their these, I think he's the one who keeps coming back to like this, he was at our best. This was us at our best.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's too bad. I wish we'd gotten to know Pete a little bit better, but I think that King did not want to know him any better. King wanted to get rid of that part of his personality. It was too much to think about, maybe.
Yeah.
And he's also like, he functions as this sort of thing that's an open secret between friends that is like you don't address with your friends, but everybody knows you have this problem, and that's an interesting dynamic, I feel.
Yeah, and I was interested in Henry talking about like his suicidal thoughts, like trying to hide them from his friends and finding this happy medium, and that reminds me a lot of kind of Pete talking about his alcoholism, and King talking about like realizing that when he was an alcoholic, he was like, well, shit, I'm going to have to be careful now or they'll make me stop drinking, I found it really fascinating too. And I was really, the emotion that came out the most for me was like how he was going to feel when he had drank it all and he was still stuck there, Like,
yeah. Any other characters you guys want to talk about? Cool.
I mean, I want to talk about Duddits, but I feel like that's...
Well, I think it's time in a little section we call Misery.
She died. She just slipped away.
Slipped away! Slipped away! She didn't just slip away! You did it! 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 You murdered my misery!
Annie!
Welcome to Misery. This is where we discuss the sections of the book that we struggled with a little bit, the stuff that made us miserable. I think that, I think it's time to talk about Duddits.
Which I feel like is fitting to not talk about him in the character section.
Yeah.
Because he feels like such a plot device and such a kind of an inhuman thing. I would be so offended. I was offended, but like, I can't imagine being like the parent of a child with Down syndrome or a person with Down syndrome reading this. It's just, it's feels really egregious to me. And I hate to be so negative about it, but it's hard for me.
I don't think you need to hate being so negative about it.
I think what's especially awful is that he makes a distinction between Duddits and other children with Downs.
Right. Yeah. It's like he doesn't
special.
even. Right. Yeah. And there's this whole level of like inhumanity even more by making him like this kind of manifestation of this telepathy power. Like he doesn't even get to be a real child with Down syndrome. He still has to be unique in some way because he wouldn't have been interesting enough in King's mind.
Well, wait till you see the movie.
Oh, I think we've talked about the movie at some point because, never mind.
No spoilers.
No
Dude,
spoilers.
And I had such a crush on Donnie Wahlberg, like back in the New Kids days. It breaks my heart to know that he was Duddits.
Feels like it feels in keeping with his fascination with fat people in a way. It is just what he would maybe qualify as like a positive version of a fascination with something that is very different. Like you can just tell that he is fascinated by the mentally disabled population and thinks that if this is so different about them, surely something else could be so different about them. How do we explain the fact that like their minds work so differently? There must be like this magical quality. It is like so, it's not like fetishistic, but it's adjacent, like
I feel like it's a little worse than that it's like it's so terrible to not really have a fully functioning mind. I must gift them with this other thing.
Yeah.
Like it's different than the fat people thing, which I think whatever. I don't want to get too far into like what kind of self-loathing King might have. But I think this is what I was referring to when I said in the ways that this book is about his accident, him consoling himself with at least I have my mind, right? Because what if I didn't? Then I'd be like Duddits.
Right. Yeah.
And then I would need something truly special. I would need to have some other truly special thing about me that wasn't how fucking smart I am.
Yeah.
And this does carry over to so many other books like The Stand. I mean, he just loves having the savant type character whose ability is balanced by what he would perceive as like a disability in other realms. Like,
right. Yeah. It's equating, a disability with magical powers, and it's essentially like, it's very similar to his magical Negro habit. It's like Duddits does not really have any humanity. He kind of exists to help the characters. He's absent for the novel for long periods of time. Like Randall, you said you could kind of take him out. Although I will say if you took him out, you're taking out Roberta, which is one of really the only developed female character in the book.
Oh, what about, you don't think Jossie or like Jocelyn?
Josie.
No.
Josie Rinkenhauer?
Yeah. The reason I compare it to the fat people is that I just think that you can tell that it's a personal fascination.
Oh, yeah.
Like
yes,
you can that King just like thinks about this and is like, wow, what a fascinating type of person. And you're like, that's not how you should think about other people. Like,
right.
What's funny is that I find it interesting that he has that perspective because some people feel that way about addicts and alcoholics.
Yeah.
You know, and he doesn't seem. And I think for the most part, like I said, I think King has a lot of grace for humans, right? But there's like some types of humans he seems to not see as fully human.
Yeah.
The fact I think we can definitely talk about Duddits and Miss Barry Newman in the same breath because it's the same, like it's both gross. They're both really gross. Only in one of them, King's knows he's being gross, kind of. And then with Duddits, he doesn't know he's being gross.
Do wonder what he would say about it today. Like, I don't think we could find anything that's recent or even anything from when this came out with him talking about it. Like, I really do wonder if he thinks to this day that he treated this at all sensitively. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. And it reminded me, I had to laugh just a minute ago, Mel, when what you were saying took me back to our discussions of the Stand series on the CBS All Access one, and our discussion of whether or not Trash Can Man in that was impaired in some way or not. And and I said no, and you kind of just said, Randall, like you are giving this too much grace. It was very funny. But yeah, so yeah, I think what it just really comes down to with Duddits is it just feels like a stock character in that he wanted something magical, like a magical type of character, and then he just kind of pulled this out of his back pocket. And the character is just, it doesn't have, like, there's no real notes of humanity in Duddits really at all. It's just
he doesn't get a negative thought at all too. Like that's one of the things that's really that's this on the same level of the magical Negro, right? You're not allowed to have like a negative thought about anybody. Right. He's not allowed to like have a thing about him that's not magical.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
like he doesn't get to be mean. He's just full. Oh, actually, you know what? I take it back. there is one humanizing thing and a grace note that I did like, which is when they realized that it did have a grudge.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
and knew how to play the
I
pegging
actually really
game.
liked.
Yeah.
Yes, I actually liked that when they were like, "Oh, he wasn't just dumb; he was taking it out on us."
yeah, that was a fun moment.
We weren't just like, we thought we were like tolerating him, and actually he totally knew like, when we were making fun of us and was getting us back. That's
Another
like
part of the
more
writing,
of that would have been nice.
The writing style about Duddits is that you feel like King is trying to appeal to some like universal view. Like,
yes,
the way the prose is put together is like, you know how it is when you're with someone with Down syndrome and you're like, what? Like,
well, it feels like he is outside of Duddits in a way that like he's not trying to get into his head as a character, you know, because like it's funny you mentioned The Stand and my mind went to Joe, because I had completely forgotten about Tom Cullen, and I'm not saying that he is written perfectly, and I think, you know, there are elements that are problematic there, but he feels like a human character in a way that Duddits does not. Like I don't feel like King ever attempts to look at Duddits as anything other than a sidekick or a friend, which feels really un-King-like to me. You know, like I think he is normally, you know, he says in On Writing, everybody's the star of their own story, but I don't feel like he sees Duddits that way. And I mean, it could be that he doesn't see Duddits as having the capacity to do that, which I think is the root of the problem. The Josie thing really pissed me off too. Like as much as like he seems fascinated with how can somebody be this beautiful and somebody like not, but not,
that was
like
weird.
Fully human. Yeah, and I was like, come on.
Yeah.
And there's also this element of a positive stereotype, you know, like I'm imbuing, like I'm giving you something because
he thinks he's doing some good work here.
I think he does. Yeah. And
well,
it's
isn't
funny,
that
like,
in Desperate or in Regulators? There's
Yeah.
that same sense of like, see how great I'm being about the Down syndrome kid or whatever,
right?
Like, it's or the autistic kid in that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. It's rough stuff.
It is. I do wonder what he would write a character like that today, and it's interesting.
I think he'd be a lot more sensitive to it now.
And obviously we're not saying that he was doing this maliciously.
Oh,
Like,
right.
He's just ignorant in this.
It was a different time, and you know,
I think it would be different. I think it's interesting. So, I know Joe Hill is part of I know some of the people that kind of run in like writers. Who are pals with him and stuff, and they're all like super social justice warrior types, you know. So I have this idea that like maybe some of King's kids might have had talks with him.
I know. It's like, so it's interesting. But I also think he has a habit of not always wanting to reckon with this kind of stuff. Like in the Playboy interview, he talks about knowing he has an issue with female characters and Black characters. And he says, I know it exists, but I can't rectify it yet. So, you know, which is a hard thing, you know.
He writes from the hip so much.
He does.
And he's so reliant, I think, on his view of the world, which is fine. And like, but it's like when you publish and you're as prolific as he is, it's like that stuff just inevitably is going to seep out. And so, I think that's why, you know, just to clarify, like we always discuss the unsavory aspects on this podcast, but we certainly do not think that King is a malicious character in any way.
Absolutely not. Yes.
It comes from his own, you know, just the ways in which that he has grown up and his own context and so on and so forth. But yeah, I love the idea of woke King manifesting there, because you read like Elevation and it's like hyper woke King.
Oh,
it's just,
totally.
Like, calm down, dude.
He's trying in some
he's like
weird ways these
overcompensating.
days.
Yeah. And when you read, like we've talked about it whenever we do the new novels like Billy Summers and stuff like that, the ways that or especially in Gwendy's Button Box, or Gwendy's Final Task, we talk a lot about it. But yeah, cool. Let's what other bits of misery do we have here? When it comes to the fat characters, I think the way he writes the Henry's patient,
that is like I feel like what I would hold up as an example to someone who asked about King's fat phobia.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, read this chapter. Like it kind of has the greatest hits in there. Like,
vast buttocks jiggling. Yeah.
Well, and the concept that he would want to spend his therapy talking about everything he eats, like that he is that obsessed with food.
It's like a cartoon character. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And it's the same thing. I feel like it is kind of like with Duddits. It's like, I can't put my brain into the head of this experience at all, or I don't want to. So I create this kind of otherness about it. So yeah, I do think that is a very case in point anti-fat or fat.
There's one thing from one of those first vignettes that I would like to ask you, Randall, if you believe that this is one of King's finest writing moments. To say that Beaver's marriage didn't work would be like saying the launch of the Challenger space shuttle went a little bit wrong.
That's a funny line. That's a
no,
line.
it is not.
Yes, it is. It's dark humor. Okay, that was maybe an oxy line, but it's
yeah.
I wrote down oxy writing several times when I was pinpointing certain things, but yeah, that's a pretty dark joke, but I like dark jokes.
I actually didn't think it was dark. I just thought it was hacky. Like I just thought it was like
I love
any
hacky
setup
jokes
that's
too.
if to say this would say this is like, come on.
Yeah.
If it's an inspired comparison,
I think there's
stand by it.
He also, maybe it's just the dudes and their filter, but I do think King enjoys a good line or joke that incorporates whores. Like he just likes talking about whores.
Oh yeah, let me add too. As the sole male on this podcast, I do need to emphasize that this is very much a dude's rock kind of book. This is the boys. The boys are back in town in this book, and I think I enjoyed it for that reason. Not that there's a shortage of men and male friendships in King books, but I will say this is
a rare book about King. It's a rare
exactly
book about male friendships.
About middle-aged white men. But no, but I will say I enjoyed, even though I found a lot of the Beaverisms that they all like to say, like fuck me Freddy and stuff, pretty cringeworthy. Like, and I wouldn't hang out with anybody who said shit like that. I still enjoyed sort of the raunchy.
I love beavers.
Yeah,
I actually like the
some
beaver.
of them
I'm not
are
a cursor person. I'm not like a huge like curse person, but I actually really liked the Beaverisms, and I loved it when Mr. Gray adopted them.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah.
There's also that great. This isn't a misery moment. I don't know where I would put it, but there was that great, like, very true to life boy interaction where. But also like very touching when two of them kiss and he's like accusing him of being queer. Yeah. And they just carry on with the joke like, oh no, I love you. Like I want to marry you. And I'm like, this is so cute. Like,
but that's dudes, man. Like,
yeah, I know.
He captures dude energy very well.
I know, but it's touching. Like,
yeah. Like, so as somebody who has a lot of dude friends and considers himself a real dude, I appreciated the dude representation in this book.
There's a lot of dude in conjunction with the
it's
dude.
Really nice to see yourself represented in media.
Right, fire.
I've been waiting to see me represented in media. So no, okay.
I find it interesting. I like to be a fly on the wall looking at dudes.
Luckily, my wife does too. So okay. Another bit of misery I had, page 87. The guy was sitting in the middle of the road like an Indian that wants to smoke a peace pipe. What are you doing?
There is so much of that in this book. Like it's like he's going down the anti-PC list and just trying to throw everything he can in.
And there's one point where I think
out loud at that,
Jonesy says something about Indian giver.
Yes, at the
says,
end.
"This might get me fired."
The Greeks come bearing gifts, but they're Indian givers.
Yes, and he was literally almost like, "Oh, that's like cancel worthy."
No, he did get me fired. He says like, "Yeah, almost today you'd be like, oh, get canceled by
Yeah, there's a lot of slurs in this too and I find it creeping into the narrator voice a little bit too, which is where I find the ugliness and the meanness, you know? And I mean, I don't know. He was in a lot of pain, and when you're in pain, it's easier to be angry, you know? Sure. So I get it, but it also
I'll
just
say
kind of...
He uses the R word a lot, obviously, but that didn't bother me so much just because as somebody who was an adolescent boy once upon a time, like... And especially during that time period, you didn't think necessarily that was a slur. That was just how you referred to people. And
sure,
even
that's true to life.
Yeah, even in the New York Times review, like Janet Maslin uses the word retarded to describe Duddits. So it's like even in 2001, people were using that word very casually in terms of, well, that's just what you call these people. And so that didn't, even though like they call it like the Retard Academy and everything like that didn't bother me so much because I'm just like, that's just
that is
boys
what they would call it.
Yeah, they don't think they're being mean, you know? It's like, and I think that is I think that, like, you know, that's like good context to remember. But because I think there is a part of me that always recoils when I see that word, because, you know, I've seen, you know, as I've gotten older, I've seen how that directly impacts people who do have those issues, like how dangerous and hurtful that word can be. Because I just remember when I was young how much that word was used, like all the time. Yeah,
all
so
the time.
It's
want to jump in real quick and say, we said this, you really emphasized about King like not being malicious too, and I just want to be the person where it doesn't really matter if you're trying to be malicious or not.
Yeah, the impact and the intent.
Yeah, and so even to say like when I say it didn't bother me that they called it the Retard Academy, it did bother. I mean,
sure,
I wasn't like taken out of the book by them doing it. It's in character for them to do it, and it doesn't have the same malicious intent that it would now when you're doing something wrong.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like when, you know, like if one of you know, our brave anti-cancel culture people were to use it, you know, but it is that's when it does damage though, right? Like that's actually why we don't say it anymore, why we try not to say it anymore. It's not because we're being mean then and we're not being mean now.
Right. Yeah. It's that we are more aware of how
it was bad.
Exactly.
It was bad. So
right. And I think like it's that we have to talk about it when we see it, because that's how we don't do it more.
Yeah.
That's how I mean, I don't know anybody who might be listening to this who doesn't know that we don't really use that word anymore, but you know, that's how we
also don't like
break those patterns, you know,
be like, it was a different time excuse, because usually there were examples of people who knew that it was not okay. Like the whole, like, it was a different time thing. Like, I don't really buy that, but
sure.
I do think that, it is accurate for these characters to be using that term.
And
it was a different time. You could write characters now if they were in that time period. I think it would be okay to do that. Like, it's in character. It's when you were mentioning kind of things that, or like the smoke and peace pipe example, where like the narrator voice is just like, you know, like what this is like, you know?
Right. Well, and it's like, it's the argument about intent versus impact. And I don't think that King I don't think he's a bigot. I don't think he is like really prejudiced in ways that he's conscious of, and so I don't think he has negative intent when writing this. I think he is writing a character that he kind of sees. But the impact, I mean, that doesn't mean we can excuse the impact of just seeing that word over and over and over again, you know?
Sure. Another bit of misery I have here, page 108. You smell anything? You mean like him? I wasn't talking about Meg Ryan's armpit.
Yeah, that's not good.
Come on, man.
I don't even get it. Is he just making fun of body odor? Like,
I guess so. I don't know. I guess, but maybe Meg Ryan has good smelling armpits because she's a good looking person. So
okay,
it's just bad, right?
Okay.
What do you guys have? Any others?
You got all mine.
What do we think of? I thought it was an interesting moment when Kurtz is like, "We are not going to call them space N-words."
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I thought, again, I like that scene a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I thought that was actually, in some ways, it's a kind of unintentional parody of the social justice movement, right?
Yeah.
Like, but he's got a point. Like, it's actually a great indictment of neoliberalism. Like, you know,
it was interesting.
More female prison guards.
Yeah, more female. Yeah, exactly. I kind of loved it. I was like, that is exactly how you would think if you're like, we are the good guys. We're not going to use the N-word.
He's like, this isn't about race or creed or whatever. This is about wiping these fuckers off the face of the planet.
Yeah, that was a really cool scene. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think it's in that scene, and it's not exactly misery, but I don't know where else to put it. There's a mention of Kurtz having an iMac.
Oh yeah.
I'm just like, was it one of the bubble ones?
Yeah.
Oh, like with the color on the back. Yeah.
What color would it have been?
Was it magenta?
Black, like his soul.
Was it one of the pink ones?
Yeah.
That would be funny. Page 281. She had crawled or been moved from where she'd been when Henry set out for the hole in the wall. And somewhere along the line, she'd come down with a bad case of dead. Come on.
Hard boiled.
Pretty great.
Hard boiled writing. That's what that is. That's
he's pretty shitty to Betsy,
Becky,
woman.
Yeah, was the other one I was going to bring
He's like,
up.
there's one line that's just like, she wasn't attractive. She was heavy set. And you're
right.
Like,
he's like, I think of her as like a country woman. Which
yeah.
Live in the country.
Also, for someone who probably also has not gone hunting much in his life, like he sure does make fun of a lot of people who wear LL Bean like in the woods.
Yeah,
you know?
that was funny. Page 654 near the end, when Henry smothers Mr. Gray, he goes, "Mr. Gray," Henry asks. This is how we say welcome to planet Earth. And he puts the pillow over Mr. Gray's
Such
face.
Independence Day.
Independence Day energy. Welcome to Earth. Okay. Any other bits of misery in this one?
I struggled with whether to put this in the misery or the word processor, but I love Jesus Christ bananas. I think that is just I'm hilariously awful that I love it.
I'm going to use it. And this is another here's another product placement one, which maybe there should be a category for product placement. I think
could be good
in these, which is when he furnishes his office. And he says there was also an Eames chair he'd seen in the Museum of Modern Art catalog, lovely, but out of his financial reach. I have that chair.
Nice.
Oh,
is it as good as advertised?
Legendary.
It's a lovely. It's the Eames. I assume it's the Eames Lounger. I just think it's a funny, like, weird call. It's like a weird call out to like.
Oh, I mean, he's
super specific about. You know, I'm sure he has one. Like he has to have one. Like that's.
Well, he does stuff like that in his current books a lot. Like in Billy Summers, like he just has a character watching The Blacklist, and he's just like, "Wow, The Blacklist is great."
Right.
Oh well, he does it
like this James Spader.
Like literally,
he talks about Jax from
James
Sons of
Spader
Anarchy and Dr. Sleep. He's like, yeah, he's pretty hot.
And well, he also has people reading John D. McDonald novels and stuff. And isn't Terry Gerstein a name of a writer? By the way, I meant to look this up.
I'm not sure.
Maybe not.
All the references is another misery for me here. Like it's just overdone. It's like so many. And I think you can just tell that, King is just like thinking about these things as he's writing and like can't help but put them in there.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we've mentioned, or at least Dan Caffrey has kind of talked about this being like him learning how to write again. And I find like the references to be like a literary crutch for him in a lot of ways. It's like he's going, which I mean, as a reader, like I pull references because I'm not the most visual reader, but it's
the sympathy for the devil scene, or the whole scene where you can kind of just tell he's like, what would this look like as part of a movie? And like
the only part of this is of course he's thinking what it would look like.
It's just sort of cringy now, but you can tell he thinks it's like so cool that he's decided that Sympathy of the Devil is their anthem and they're gonna play it while they blast the alien.
It's funny. It played at a bar I was at last night, and I was like, and I instantly thought of this book, and I'm like, it's actually kind of a cool song.
It is a cool song.
It's a great song. It's a great song.
Yeah,
he does. This is not the first time he's put it in a book. Yeah,
I think it's actually kind of a miraculous thing that song has managed to retain any menace at all.
Mm-hmm.
But it has.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, cool. Let's hop on over to the word processor of the gods.
And we're gonna make a new rule. Whenever I'm in here, you hear me typing. Whether you don't hear me typing, what the fuck you hear me doing in here, when I'm in here, that means that I am working. That means don't come in. Now, do you think you can handle that?
Yeah.
Fine. Why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
Here in Word Processor of the Gods, we talk about the good writing, the stuff we really responded to, stuff that was quite lovely. Do you guys have anything off the cuff? I've got a few here.
I have one that was my favorite passage, and it's at the not the very end, but it's near the end on page 826 in my version. Sorry, I'm vamping to try to find it. When he's talking about pain, I find his descriptions of pain in this book really interesting and really resonant. So on page 827, and this is, it's right after, it's funny. It appears to be the Rolling Stones singing Sympathy for the Devil. He has no more identified this song when his hip suddenly goes nuclear. Jonesy utters a surprise scream and falls to the black and red ICU tiles, clutching at himself. This is how it was just after he hit, an explosion of red agony. He rolls over and over, looking up at the glowing light panels, at the circular speakers from which the music Anastasia screamed in vain is coming. Music from another world. When the pain is this bad, everything is in another world. Pain makes a shadow of substance and a mockery even of love. That is something he learned in March and must learn now again, which I thought that was, I loved it. It's just how it like blots everything out, you know? Like,
yeah.
when I had a spinal fusion, I remember waking up and just feeling like I was laying on pain, and like there wasn't anything else but that. And I think that he captures that. That's kind of the epitome of it. But I think he goes back to that here, and really, you can tell that he's really feeling it.
Yeah, I've always said on this pod that he writes pain so well. And you guys were saying, like, he builds character through pain a lot. Like characters who are suffering from anything, you know? And so I think that, and maybe Mel, you were saying this, somebody was saying this earlier, but just this notion of there's almost an existential quality to the way he writes about pain here. That's different than it is in other books. I think it's more purely physical and sensational, like when he writes about it in earlier works. But I think now that he's experienced like this level of pain, like, yeah, in this book, it sort of becomes this, it transcends itself the way he writes about it. And it's more about this emotional impact that it has rather than the physical one. Although he still does the physical one very well, especially with like, even though with all the injured people in this book, it's like Pete's knee that he reserves some of the most like rough writing for, just the way it keeps seizing up and everything.
I don't even know what that is. Like, I don't have the reference point for that. Like what, and it's still very affecting. Like,
yeah. I hate it. Go ahead.
I have just a couple of like one-liner, like just a couple of like little lovely kind of bits.
Yeah, let's hear them.
One is from Jonesy in the blind right at the very beginning, saying he put away his Walkman. He preferred the silk of the wind and the pines, the rust of the crows.
Yeah.
Which is really nice.
Rust of the crows. That's great.
That nice. And then actually this might be my favorite line. Let me find it here. Oh, and I believe that this is when Henry makes it back to the Scout. The snow lit on his cheeks and forehead like the light touch of a kitten's paws. Yeah, it's really lovely. And
my cat smacks my face, so I don't know what that's like.
Again, I have like these usually King, I think especially in describing like a moment, can get kind of rapturous. But for some reason in this book, I'm just finding like these little bits, which I really like. This is, I believe, when Mr. Gray gets mad about something, the horn beating out a Morse code of rage.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
Yeah. And then the dreamless since childhood and thus insane is a reference, but it's a good one. And then this gets back to when me realizing I was reading in this book that for King, curiosity is this completely redeeming quality. Like if you have curiosity, like there's something like, I think that's what makes Underhill, like what rescues Underhill for him.
What I look for when I date. Curiosity is such an important component.
Oh no, I completely agree. It is a redeeming quality. But he's also talking about how it's one of the ways that makes that Mr. Gray starts to become more human. That he starts to wonder, like he's trying to get this thing done, right? He's trying to take poor lad to the reservoir, but he stops for some reason. I can't even remember what he gets curious about, but what I marked is he'd also fallen victim in some degree to his host's mostly useless but infernally sticky curiosity.
Yeah. On page 113 or 112, I wrote down good fart writing. And here's what I took down. Beaver asked, "Do you smell it?" Jonesy did, in spite of the cold, fresh air coming in through the door. Ether or ethyl alcohol, yes, there was still that, but now it was mixed with other stuff. Feces for sure, something that could have been blood, and something else, something like mind gas trapped a million years and finally let free. Not the kind of fart smells kids giggled over on camping trips, in other words. This was something richer and far more awful. You could only compare it to farts because there was nothing else even close. At bottom, Jonesy thought, it was the smell of something contaminated and dying badly. So and then they see like the trail of blood on the floor going to the bathroom, and I'm like screaming. So
I didn't pull out any specific passages because I think I enjoyed the conceptual writing. One of my teachers would have said King is a paragraph writer, not so much a sentence writer, though I'm glad, Anna, that you pointed out some of those like really lovely sentences. I just kind of I was kind of trucking through the whole book. I will say that I really love the portion where Jonesy almost shoots McCarthy and talks about the sort of optical illusion of him being a deer, and like that is such a suspenseful and interesting and great moment. And the whole McCarthy stuff, like that's the only thing I remembered from reading this book when I was younger. It's like so suspenseful and like you feel for McCarthy, but he's also very scary in that he doesn't quite have a grip on reality and keeps saying weird shit. But I think in general, the telepathy shit, like everything that we've sort of mentioned as what has like gripped me. I don't have any specific examples of the prose. I just think there's a lot of good Kingian stuff in here.
Yeah. Something I loved, I don't have written down, but, or I don't have the exact quote because it's more of like a sequence, but I love Owen's memory of breaking in, like, going into the house next door,
breaking
where
the plate
door was open, and he walks in and he's got a boner, and like he breaks a plate and he like shatters, like he pees on somebody's bed or something.
He can't piss on the toothbrush.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He can't piss because he's too hard. Yeah. So then he spits on the toothbrush. That to me, it's like, it's such a strange, weird thing that is very true, I think, to sort of young male, I don't know, like directionless anger or
I have
rage,
actually part of it,
recklessness. Mark. Okay. Yeah.
If he had been older, he supposed he would have come in his pants. The purity was in the senselessness. The joy was in the sound of the shatter. The afterglow was the slow and pleasurable wallow in remorse for having done it and the fear of being caught.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, you know, when I was a kid, we loved, there was always construction happening around my house, and we loved to break into the construction sites and walk around when nobody was there, and we would break shit, we'd throw stuff around. And it's like, and there was such a recklessness and a pointlessness to it. Like, I love that the purity was in the senselessness,
Mm-hmm.
That to me, that line makes so much sense to me as somebody who was just like a reckless little kid once upon a time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love that whole section. I also just want to read this section from Pete's story from the beginning, his like vignette from the beginning. By midnight, he's drunk in some New Hampshire dive, the Muddy Rudder, or maybe it's the Ruddy Mother. He's trying to tell some chick who's as drunk as he is that once he really believed he was going to be the first man to set foot on Mars. And although she's nodding and saying, yeah, he has an idea that all she understands is that she'd like to get outside of one more coffee brandy before closing. And that's okay. It doesn't matter. Tomorrow he'll wake up with a headache, but he'll go into work just the same. And maybe he'll sell a car, and maybe he won't. But either way, things will go on. Maybe he'll sell that burgundy Thunderbird. Goodbye, sweetheart. Once things were different, but now they were the same. He reckons he can live with that. For a guy like him, the rule of thumb is just SSDD. And so fucking what? You grew up, became a man, had to adjust to taking less than you hoped for. You discovered the dream machine had a big out of order sign on it. It's like, I just love the resignation, like the fuck it quality of all of that. That's obviously a mask for just deep sadness. I just love that writing.
Mm-hmm. I forgot to mention in the misery section that I hate Henry's whole Eggman thing.
Yeah, that's annoying. I was like, it's not working, buddy. Jen, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I had one in the little vignette about Jonesy at the beginning when he's talking about his decision to go have lunch outside. And he says, the sunshine is untrustworthy but enticing. And because the Definiak thing went better than he had expected, he thinks he wants to get out in that sunlight before more March clouds and maybe snow come rolling in. He has planned to eat in his office, but a new plan occurs to him. It is absolutely the worst plan of his life, but of course Jonesy doesn't know that. The plan is to grab his briefcase, pick up a copy of the Boston Phoenix, and walk across the river to Cambridge. He'll sit on a bench and eat his egg salad sandwich in the sun. And then on the next page, because that's when he is struck by the car, he says, this is a mistake. This is how lives change forever. And I find, like, I read that, it's kind of an encapsulation of what I find so interesting in this book, as I find King like exploring what had happened, what would have happened if he had just left 5 minutes later or earlier on the day that he gets hit by the car, which I just think is
this is how really lives change is a big
exactly
line. Yeah, I've seen that. I saw that come up in some reviews too. I think like, you know, that line just carries so much weight when you look at it through the context of the accident, you know? Okay, let's pop on over to our next section. It is the cemetery.
What's the bottom of the truth?
Well, sometimes that is better. The person you put up there ain't the person that comes back. It may look like that person, but it ain't that person. Because whatever lives in the ground beyond that cemetery ain't human at all.
The cemetery gates are clanking in the cold wind. That is my setup. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
That is my setup.
I I'm just goofing. I'm just goofing. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, in this case, yes.
Farts in the wind. Well, yeah.
But would that be a cold wind or a warm wind? I think
it's a warm wind, definitely. Yeah. I have a fart one right here, right up top. It was ridiculous to think of what they were hearing as passing gas or breaking wind. Those were airy phrases, light as meringue. The sounds coming from behind the closed door were brutal and meaty, like ripping flesh.
Meaty.
God, it's just, it sends chills doing it. I would just say, though, I think one of the reasons I love this book so much is like the whole McCarthy section to me is so creepy. And it's such a great setup for the whole book. And it goes on for 100 and some pages. And I think pairing it too with the Becky woman, when they find her sitting in the road, like kind of just staring into the sky, that is such a great pairing with it. And I don't know. And it taps into a lot of the alien stuff that I find freaky. The loss of time, that it's like days later and he's so much further from his campsite than he thinks he is. All that stuff. Because I saw Fire in the Sky when I was really, really young. And that movie fucked me up so bad. And all the classic alien lore, that stuff always got under my skin. And so the fact that he toys with that like he does in this is very effective to me. So I would just say that whole McCarthy section is great cemetery for me.
It's so good.
And I also like that you get McCarthy as a character actually, which you don't get with Becky because she's comatose most of the time.
Yeah.
But how he's like this prim businessman who, and one of the ways they know that something's really wrong is he starts cursing, right? Like I like that. That was sort of a nice little, and also that he's so prim about his, he doesn't, there's something that when he's, crossing these boundaries into the taboo areas of the bathroom, right? Like when McCarthy doesn't want them to come in, when he's saying, I just need to take a shit, basically.
Yeah.
Like who has not had people standing outside a door and you've been, well, at least, I mean, I think it's probably happened.
Oh, it's happened to me.
It's so mortifying.
When you're like, just leave me I'm just taking, I'm using the bathroom. Cause you usually, I can't even usually say taking a shit. I'm usually like, I'm in here. I'm in here.
Yeah, I don't shit, so I don't know what that's like.
Right.
Can I jump in super quick just to say one of the funniest things I've ever seen? This is adjacent, but I tell this story every chance I get. Was I used to hang out at Taco Bell when I was a kid, and and then there was it was a one-person bathroom.
Cemetery.
Yeah, this is real cemetery shit. And then one day I opened the bathroom door to go, and the guy had left it unlocked, and there was a guy in there. It was like an older trucker guy with a plunger in his hand, and the toilet was overflowing, and he just looked at me and he just said, "It's gonna be a while." And it was one of the funniest things that has ever happened to me. But I always I can't not think of that. Mel, cemetery, what do you have?
I would like to just read the very short segment of Pete's death. There's so much facial violence in this book, and it is all very effective. I think this one sticks with me though for a particular vividness. He felt something leap from Mr. Gray's mind, and the stuff growing on Pete did not just twitch, but clenched. There was a tenebrous creaking sound as Pete's skull cracked in a dozen places. His face, what remained of it, pulled inward in a kind of yank, making him old at a stroke.
God damn.
Ooh!
That's
good.
Nasty.
Woo!
Good stuff.
Yeah, man, this is like body horror spectacular.
I know. Well, here's some body horror here. Being someone who's afraid of alien face, I'm also afraid in this book of alien body. So
the whole thing.
Yes, the whole shebang. He's saying that this is like when Jonesy encounters the alien behind him when he's at the bathroom door. And they're talking about Mr. Gray, who was an X-Files staple, right? So they go, all the images had gotten the eyes right, at least. Those huge black eyes that were just like the eyes of the thing that had chewed its way out of McCarthy's ass. And the mouth was close, a vestigial slit, no more than that. But its gray skin hung in loose folds and swags, like the skin of an elephant dying of old age. From the wrinkles, there ran listless yellow-white streams of some pussy substance. The same stuff ran like tears from the corners of its expressionless eyes. Clots and smears of it puddled across the floor of the big room, across the Navajo rug, beneath the Dreamcatcher, back toward the kitchen door through which it had entered. How long had Mr. Gray been there? Had he been outside watching Jonesy run from the snowmobile shed to the back door with the useless roll of friction tape in his hand? He didn't know. He only knew that Mr. Gray was dying, and Jonesy had to get past him because the thing in the bathroom had just dropped onto the floor with a heavy thud. It would be coming for him. That's just so gross and creepy. And
thanks for not
very
saying
effective.
pussy substance.
Well, that's I was gonna make this joke, but the thing was I thought it was pussy substance when I first read it, and I was like, what does that fucking mean? And then I realized it was pussy, but I was like, what do pussies have to do with this? So anyways, that one got to me. Pretty much any, like, the image too of all the aliens standing outside the spaceship that's been crashed, like just the image of the grays in the snow outside this crashed spaceship, very, very scary to me. And one of the things that I always remembered about this book, even years after I read it. So what other cemetery we got?
I have two, but they're from basically the same place, so maybe I'll just read one of them. The decapitated body tumbled off the bed and onto a litter of clothes Henry didn't recognize. A brown coat, an orange flagman's vest, a pair of jeans with cuffs. None of them had worn cuff jeans. And junior high school, those who did had been branded shit kickers. Several of the eggs tumbled off with the body. Most landed on either the clothes or the litter of Jonesy's books and remained whole, but a couple hit the floor and broke open. Cloudy stuff like spoiled egg white oozed out, about a tablespoon from each egg. Within it were those hairs, writhing and twisting and seeming to glare at Henry with black eyes the size of pinheads. Looking at them made him feel like screaming.
Yeah.
Makes me feel like screaming.
Speaking of the black eyes, I've got one here too, which is near the end of the book, like 626. Kurtz burst out laughing and patted Freddy on the shoulder. Beside Freddy, Archie Perlmutter slipped deeper into coma. Inside his lower intestine, in that rich dump of discarded food and worn-out dead cells, something for the first time opened its black eyes. That's so fucking good. That's so creepy.
I gotta do the eyeball scene.
Do it!
He caught a shiny zipping glitter as his hand, which was gripping the ballpoint like a dagger, plunged the pen into his staring eye. There was a popping sound, and he jittered back and forth behind the wheel like a badly managed puppet, his fist digging the pen in deeper and deeper, up to the halfway mark, then to the 3/4 mark, his split eyeball now running down the side of his face like a freakish tear. The tip struck something that felt like thin gristle, bound up for a moment, then passed through into the meat of his brain.
Oh, man.
Thin gristle.
Oh.
Keep the gristle out of it. Any other cemetery before we feast on some pound cake?
Yeah,
the nose scene is bad too.
Oh,
yeah,
God, yeah, that one. Ugh. I think a lot of my cemetery stuff was more conceptual. You know, like as much as I loved the bacon and the sweet, like discovering sweet, the part where he eats all of the raw bacon and then he has this violent puke and diarrhea, like really. I found that really upsetting because it's Jonesy's body, you know? And I found like this just really unsettling thought of him like doing, like watching this from a distance, but knowing that it is his own body that he is torturing, you know, in this really gross way.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as well. I'm like, yeah, as good as this is, like that's probably going to wreak long-term damage.
Totally,
to the body.
yeah.
Cool. Let's pop on over to pound cake.
After all you've been taught, everyone isn't bad, Mama. Everything isn't a sin. Come to your closet and pray. Ask to be forgiven. He's a nice boy, Mom. You like him. You really like him, Mama.
Here in pound cake, we talk about the perhaps unintentionally funny stuff, but also literal pound cake, which we get in this book, page 25. Anyway, I ate the rest of the pound cake that was in the fridge, and then I got in the car and drove down to Dunkin' Donuts. So we get some actual pound cake in this one. That doesn't always happen, but when it does, we remember why we named this section that anyways. I also just want to read the sentence, he wasn't prissy about farts as a rule, but this one really reeked. I love having a rule. I'm not prissy about farts. I like to think that I personally am not as well, but I've never articulated it that way. So.
I found I had such a hard time figuring, whether I was going to put something in pound cake or the cemetery in this one, because it was so like every time I would start to think about what this fart description actually meant, as far as like tearing their body apart, it really upset me. But there was the one that I pulled, other than that, I have to shit. If I can just shit, it'll be okay. Because I thought that was pretty funny.
That was great.
there was on page 218, he's talking about McCarthy. And I think it's before a lot of the shit has actually gone down. There was a loud, dank fart from beneath the man on the toilet, and the room immediately filled with an eye-watering aroma of excrement and airplane glue. Jonesy thought it was a wonder that the shower curtain didn't melt. From the bowl, there came a splash, now the plop of a turd dropping. At least Jonesy didn't think so. It sounded more like a fish jumping in a pond.
Oh. Nasty. Mel, what were you going to say?
I'm intrigued by the women in the military unit. And there's the part where Kate Gallagher is introduced obliquely where Freddie recommends her. Gallagher, boss. Kate? That's right. Is she a cannibal, Freddie? The person we leave in charge has to be a cannibal. She eats them raw with slaw, boss.
Oh.
And then later, these two women are like trying to execute all these runners, you know, that have escaped, and they're talking to each other. And well, quadrant 4 is clear. Maybe that'll lower it a little. McAvoy's eyes sparkled. We got over 40. Jackson has got hard numbers for you. And speaking of hard, right about now, I could really use a hard. And she gets interrupted. And I am really confused about this. Like, is she about to say like a hard fuck? A hard drink?
I was wondering, I think it was drink was what I was thinking, but hard fuck definitely crossed my mind.
I thought they might have even been like flirting. I mean, maybe that's just me. Like they, like these two, like
it's
military
a weirdly
women.
sexual. It's a weirdly sexual moment. Yeah,
it's strange. The women in the military unit are really strange, and I felt like it was a weird kind of like King trying to combat sexism by being like,
right.
But also Kate Gallagher eats them raw with slaw.
Mm-hmm.
More female prison guards.
More female prison guards. Yeah. Speaking
go ahead,
of
Anna,
speaking of sexual weirdness, I guess. When the whole going to go see pussy at track is like
very true to life.
Very, I guess. I don't know. I think we talked. Maybe I just heard Dale's episode about Tommy knockers and finding Playboys in the woods, and how like that's a thing boys do. I just don't have any experience with that. We passed around forever. And when I was in junior high, that was a thing we did. The Judy Blume book. Wow.
Oh yeah.
I am older than y'all.
I read Judy Blume. Yeah.
Okay. Like, that was like the thing that was like, ooh, have you read Forever yet? You know,
ours was Flowers in the Attic.
Oh, that too. But making a trek with other girls to go see porn would not have been a thing that,
like, I hear there's a dick on the wall.
Yeah.
And
right.
I guarantee put myself in the place of like, let's go see some dicks, everybody.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
I guarantee you it's very relatable behavior in this one at that
sure,
age.
But there's a piece of writing that I would like to call attention to, though.
Yeah.
For the first time in his life, Pete feels real lust. It is a meaty feeling, red and heavy, that stiffens his prick, dries up the spit in his mouth, and makes it hard for him to think.
Yeah.
Not wrong, I guess, but gross.
It's good
also.
pound cake. Good pound cake. I want to say I genuinely was laughing out loud at the section when this pussy section. So I just love this. Hey, you guys, Jonesy breaks in suddenly excited. You want to see Tina Jean Schlossinger's pussy? Who's Tina Jean Sloppinger?
Yeah.
Pete asks. But he is already intrigued. Seeing any pussy seems like a great idea to him. He is always looking at his dad's Penthouse and Playboy magazines, which his dad keeps out in the workshop behind the big Craftsman toolbox. Pussy is very interesting. It doesn't give him a boner and make him feel sexy the way bare tits do, but he guesses that's because he's still a kid. And pussy is interesting. That is italicized.
That's a great distinction of like, yeah, you get the appeal of tits before you get the appeal of
absolutely
seeing bare genitals.
Pussy is very interesting.
I remember being confronted with porn at some point and being like, that?
Right.
like a Penthouse, like when and being like, that's like a doctor exam. That's not.
Yeah.
Because people find that sexy. That's what the doctor does.
What a lost pre-internet era where you had to travel to a shed where there was rumored to be a picture of a woman's pussy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have another here. This was just, again, I guess I'm putting things that genuinely made me laugh in Pound Cake in this instance. But yeah, so I said, how do I know you'll feed me? Jonesy says. Because I have to, Mr. Gray said from his side of the door, and Jonesy realized Mr. Gray was also being truthful. If you didn't pour gas into the machine from time to time, the machine stopped running. But if you satisfy my curiosity, I'll feed you the things you like. If you don't, the smells from under the door changed, became the greenly assaultive odor of broccoli and Brussels sprouts.
Jonesy is 12.
I know. Like the alien's like, I'm going to punish you by making you eat Brussels sprouts. Like that is very funny to me.
Brussels sprouts are good.
I know they're great.
Yeah, they came. But yeah, roast Brussels sprouts are awesome. There's obviously a lot of talk about pussy in the whole first part of the book. And Pete does a lot of the thinking about it, I will point out, because I believe this is from another Pete section. When it comes to pussy, he thinks you either go for it or you don't. There's no such thing as saving it for another day.
What does that mean?
I have to say, as
actually,
a dude
the context for that is even funny. Is even funnier now that I remember it. It's so they're talking about how he kind of wishes they hadn't gone to Tracker. This is they hadn't gone to Tracker Brothers. He says, it's Henry starting to wish they hadn't detoured in the deserted driveway by this deserted building at all, or at least had saved it for another day, which even at 14, he realizes is stupid when it comes to pussy. There's
I have
no
to
such
say,
thing as saving it for another day.
I've been the dude defender in this one. That one I can't really relate to. You can always save it for another day. So any other pound cake here? What do you guys got? All right. Yeah, I think the lines got blurry. All the farts ended up in cemetery and elsewhere.
Right.
I figured pound cake was going to be like an hour until I actually started trying to find them,
Yeah.
There is no sex in this book.
Yeah.
No.
It's mentioned. It's mentioned
as
but
something that Mr. Gray might enjoy.
Yes.
Which I kind of like, in a way, it's kind of almost sweet. Like, it's like, Steve, one of the cool things about being human is sex with your wife.
Yeah.
Well, he's talked about like after recovery, like he was happy that he could still have sex with Tabitha,
Yeah.
He was open about that.
Cool. Let's walk off these pound cake calories in a place we call King's Dominion.
There's another world out there. I know there is.
Here in King's Dominion, we talk about the ties to the larger Stephen King universe. Obviously, there's a lot here. We begin with Derry, Maine, where it is set. That's where these kids are also from, so we get a little bit of that. Multiple 19s in this book. King throws it out pretty liberally. And it was around this time that he was sort of conceptualizing the end of the Dark Tower, so I think all of that was on his mind. What else stood out to you guys?
So can we talk about the big It reference, which for me made me so sad as a kid when I read this book. Like I can also remember, this is the one thing that stands out in my mind as memorable from the book with the first time I read it, finding the plaque that is a statue of some children and then has a dedication from the losers and that has been spray painted over with Pennywise Lives. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
I had the same feeling. I was like, well, is Penny I had kind of a two-prong thing, which was its sequel when, and then is Pennywise going to show up in this book? And I had that moment as well. And I remember being mildly disappointed because I think at that time I still wasn't used to the idea of King just like haphazardly, folding in things from the world. I felt like it all would have some stronger purpose. So I was like waiting for Pennywise to show up somehow in this, which obviously fine that he didn't.
Didn't you guys just answer this question? Like, is he still alive in May in the Bag of Bones episode? What was the conclusion that you reached?
Probably probably.
Yeah. Especially with this, and then I feel like there's another reference to it as well in another book that Pennywise like is still alive.
But I hear you with that, Mel, because I watched a particular Terminator sequel, and I had to pause it 10 minutes in and go cry for like 10 minutes in my closet because it's like this emotional story that I'm really invested in, and then to find out that it was for nothing, there's like a heartbreak there.
Yeah, as a kid who had just finished it, I was like, really devastated.
I know. I was like, what? But I feel like that more, and this is kind of what we talked about in the episode, is like, it is this concept of like a cycle, a repeating cycle of evil that do you ever really break it or does it just change forms,
Yeah. And there's also a reference, I think, I mean, there's a reference to kids going missing in Derry. And when they go and rescue Josie from the pipe, there's a scent of something like even older and nastier in the sewers that I think is another nod.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then there's also the being in the Tracker Brothers store has this real, like, the thought of someone being inside a body. Like, I'm thinking of Regulators when she like created the phone to try to communicate, you know, is how he's like creating the fax machine.
Yeah.
It also reminded me kind of Mort in Drawing of the Three. Like, it's a little bit the reverse, like the person trapped inside the mind can't control the body.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of got that flair.
Yeah,
And
it's
Carrie, when she inhabits Sue Snell's mind, and it's a library of different files that she can flip through.
Yeah, Abby does that with Rose the Hat too.
It's wild to think about how many connections there are to Regulators. Like, when you just said the telephone thing, I'm like, damn, like, who would have thought that he was drawing on that book so much?
Well, he pours molasses in his mouth in this book too, just like another character pours honey.
He puts it in the coffee.
Oh, that's right. Which I remember, I read. I was like, fuck, that tastes terrible.
Yeah.
But also, sugar is so good.
There's also a scene where they talk about fighting bullies by throwing rocks at one point. And so, of course, I thought of Henry Bowers and the gang then. And then there's a character with the last name Henreid, which is just such
No, isn't it Owen
it's his first name.
Yep, it's Owen.
Henry's name.
Yep.
Oh, right. Yeah, he mixes up Henry's name and he calls him Henreid, which I just thought was, like, funny.
Yeah,
weird.
Bring in Lloyd.
Yeah, there's a point at which he says that a burning building looks like a dragon's eye.
Oh, there you go. Direct reference to 1122 here. Page 299. No matter how hard he yells, it's no good. The phone lines are down. You can't go back. Can't kill your own grandfather. Can't shoot Lee Harvey Oswald as he kneels at a 6th floor window of the Texas School Book Depository, which is fun because I know he had 1122 sitting on a shelf for many years. So he makes a couple different references throughout his books where he references the idea of stopping the JFK assassination. So it's always fun when that pops up.
Well, and I feel like we've talked a lot about how this connects to it, but it also like has kind of a body feel to it, you know, of the 4 friends going on a trek, although they're trying to find porn here instead of a body. But there are also a couple of times where I feel like he talks about a character's eyes being open as it's either snowing or raining. And that is how he describes the body that they find, like filling up with hail, but his eyes are still open too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
I find eerie.
You know, that section, I think it's telling we didn't really talk about it. I think that, like, the whole mud in his eyes thing was really disturbing to me. But also, like, how inconsequential does that feel based on how much they emphasize how important that moment was, that Duddits like was responsible for this in some way. But then it really doesn't, like, it just contributes to that whole idea of like all of these flashback scenes, all of this Duddit stuff. None of it feels as connected as the characters keep telling us it's connected. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
yeah,
I just thought about that again.
Which is sad because what a great haunting concept of like you had an inclination in a dream and it was amplified to the extent that someone died. Like,
page 504. Henry thinks the Ues make Duddits sound like Ray Walston in My Favorite Martian. Ray Walston played Glenn Bateman in the Stand 1994 miniseries. Great character actor. Big fan. He also plays Mr. Hand in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So, and then on page 545, they mentioned Beryl Black Beauty pencils.
Yes.
From the Dark Half, which play a big role in the Dark Half. Yeah. So that was fun. Any others that you guys have?
Telepathy is a big part of the King canon.
Yeah. Yeah, I spotted at least 3 19s in this, including Duddits' house's 19 Maple Lane. So a lot of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, some good stuff. Cool. All right. I think it's time for our final thoughts.
Dad, can we go now?
You ready?
Yeah, we've been ready for an hour.
Okay, I'll be right there.
You said that a half hour ago. Yeah, my dad's weird. He gets like that when he's writing.
Welcome to Final Thoughts. This is where we share our final thoughts and our MVP and our Pennywise Clown Nose ranking. So who wants to kick it off? Jen, tell us. Bright Red Pennywise Clown Nose ranking MVP.
I really went into this looking for things to like, and I found a lot more than I was expecting. I don't really enjoy reading this book, but I enjoy talking about the themes, and I really like talking about it as kind of a metaphor for physical recovery and pain. So I think I don't know. I have a hard time picking an MVP. I don't know. I guess Roberta, because I feel like she's the most developed female character in there. And also I want to give a shout out to all the hot guys that will play these characters in the movie, because maybe those are my MVPs, because that's kind of what kept me going in a lot of situations. But I think I'm going to give it 2.5 bright penny-wise clown noses. I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to. And I liked this conversation, I think, more than the book itself. But I think there's a lot of rich stuff here, even though I don't really like the book.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Gotcha. Anna, how about you?
2.5 sounds about right. It's a book that I would not recommend to anyone that wasn't already a huge fan.
Yeah.
But if you are a huge fan, you should probably try it. Because you're gonna, if nothing else, I think it is a side of King you don't see very often, the mean King.
Yeah.
Right. That you see glimpses of in Bachman, but not usually in any. I can't think of another King book that's as mean as this one. I think I'm gonna say Owen.
Who's your MVP?
Is my MVP. Like I said, I just don't think there's another character like him.
Yeah.
That King likes to make villains out of military characters for the most part. Just following orders, that's a thing he really hates. And to have a sort of career military guy who has committed atrocities turn out to be, again, literally the hero. He is actually the one who winds up saving the day, to the extent the day needed to be saved. We exhausted our conversation about whether or not the ending of the book makes any sense. I'd say Underhill is the hero, or my MVP, and 2.5.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know that there's maybe 1 or 2 people in our Losers Club Discord, accessible via Patreon, patreon.com/thebarons. But I know there's at least a couple people in the Discord who Dreamcatcher was their first book they ever read by King. Yeah, which is super interesting, because I remember thinking too, I was like, that's an interesting first book for King, because it's really crazy, and I think it is representative of a lot of King stuff, but it's also not quite I don't know, like there is a part of it that feels different, and it's fun to see that was some people's entranceway into King. Mel, how about you?
So I think my main 2 problems with the book are what we've already discussed. It's the Duddits problem, and it's the slowness of the third act problem. Those are my main 2 problems. I'm really inclined to be surprisingly generous towards this book.
Do it.
I just enjoyed reading it much more than I thought I would. Like, I was very much ready to be of a Tommyknocker's mind with it, which is a book that I also enjoy, but more at a distance. I think on that episode, I used the language like as an artifact, like it is interesting. Whereas this one, I found more to connect with. I thought the bond between the friends was super relatable. The idea of squandered potential in this friend group kept me motivated to read about them even after 2 of them had died, and grounding it in that realism of the invasion being a sort of doomed mission, but also capable of killing off these main characters this early, made it seem unwieldy in a appealing way. There's just so much of King in here that, as you said, Randall, knowing that this is the book that he wrote after his accident can contribute a lot to it. It is almost as though he is going through his catalog of devices to find them again and making them a little bit new as he does so that it is rewarding for people that know King. And in that way, it was rewarding for me. The problems are so big that it's going to knock it down substantially in my rating. But I do think, like, I just love when he does aliens, and I am just sympathetic for this story. 3.5 out of 5, which is maybe a little high, but I can't discount the fact that it's a 600-page book that I enjoyed way more than I expected to.
MVP
is going to be a Beaver. I love Beaver. I want to be friends with him.
Who'd you say is the Beav of our friend group?
I think we all have a lot of beef in us. Probably
Who's the beef of this podcast?
I'm the beef. I'll take it. Hell yeah.
Because I have a term for jokes that you make that are like, I call them rand mines, because they're land mines of like, you don't know it's going to be that dirty or that like fucking insane until it comes out of your mouth and you're like, well, I stumbled across a randy mine.
Love it. Okay, I'm gonna give it 3.5 as well. 3.5 bright red Pennywise clown noses, because man, I was like enthralled with this book, like especially the first third. Second third, enthusiasm dipped a little bit, but still stayed pretty high. It wasn't until part 3, when the chase begins, that's when I started to really flag. Yeah, quote unquote chase. That's when I started to flag, because it really just felt like, and to, belabor the metaphor, spinning wheels, in the snow for a while. I think that, and I also think King just gets way too caught up in explaining the aliens and explaining everything. There's so much like weird lore that kind of factors in here, and this telepathic stuff that Henry is picking up and he's explaining, and he gets these huge info dumps. And I just feel like that's not something I feel like King does too often. He always has like exposition moments and explanation moments, but here it feels like there's so much heavy lifting to do with all of this like weird alien lore that it just gets overwhelming to me. And I found it laborious by the time I got to the end, which was unfortunate, because I love the popcorn nature of it in the early going. I love the body horror. I love the entire McCarthy sequence, all the alien stuff. And then even the introduction of the military guys, who I think I grew a little tired of by the end. Yeah. But I think in the early going, it's a lot of fun. I think, and you talked about this being like aspects of it being very cinematic. And I think that that's very true. Like when he sets up kind of the whole, rebellion against the military people, and they're like blowing things up, and I don't know, it's like all the soldiers are running around. It's like it feels so it's like the scene I always bring up in The Talisman, where he's taking the raft across the water, where it's like, you're giving me too much detail. I don't need all of this. It feels like it's setting up an action movie set piece that I don't really need. Like there's a joke about how like, they would have gotten a lot further if Henry and Owen had just slipped out in the quiet of night instead of blowing everything up. And I'm like, yeah, maybe it would have been better to do that, because we could have just kept the story moving. Because I do feel like the brakes sort of hit once we hit the third act, and then it starts to crawl rather than sprint, which I think in the early going, it's sprinting. So I don't know. I think there were a lot of pleasures for me in this book, and I like, and I think, again, as a dude, I appreciate the dude qualities of this book, and I wouldn't say I'm bonded again to the friendship, but I will say the camaraderie, like the kind of banter that exists between these dudes, is very relatable and cool. And I really like all 4 of the characters. I think they're all really cool. Henry's a dick, but I like his journey, and I think it's interesting to be in his mind. So 3.5 bright red Pennywise clown noses, and my MVP is Lad, the poor dog we didn't even get a chance to discuss, who gets fucking filled with a shit weasel and then is tortured throughout the last third of this book, which is also, I think, why I struggle.
At least Mr. Gray is like calming him down.
I was gonna say, like, it actually helped me a lot whenever it was like Mr. Gray touched his sleep center and like calmed him down. I'm like, all right, so Lad's not.
I appreciated that. But yeah, just trying to shove,
suffering the entire time until the very end, where he's like basically
shoving him through a hole, like a small gap in the floor. I was like, this poor dog. But I haven't been that traumatized since Raider and Needful Things. So but it's, I gotta give the dog some love in that regard. So yeah, that's Dreamcatcher, man. That was a lot of fun. Good episode, good chat. And if you haven't listened to our episode on The Accident, we, on our Patreon tier, in our archive section, Jen and Mike and I did a really great, I think, deep dive into the whole journey, the whole accident journey, and how that, and we talk a bit about how that ripples out throughout the rest of his work, up until now. And Dreamcatcher was obviously a big part of that. So if you want to hear that, that's in our Patreon, patreon.com/thebarons. Hundreds of hours of content there. Please check it out. Lots of good stuff. Anna, what's coming up on Space the Nation?
Well, we just recorded a very long episode about Ministry for the Future, which is the second Obama recommended science fiction book we've read. I'm not taking any science fiction recommendations from Obama ever again. we just spoiler alert, we hated it. But we also recently completed Emmerich Airy, which was for the month of February, which we did the oeuvre of Roland Emmerich, concluding with Moonfall.
I need to see Moonfall. Yeah,
it is so good.
Yeah.
It is
Oh my God.
it is my favorite movie of the year so far, although I haven't seen many movies.
I want to see it.
Like, it is the most fun I've had in a theater in a very long time. Although, again, there's all these stipulations. I haven't been in a theater very much in a very long time, but I laughed so much at that movie. It was just a joy. And if you have seen it, you should listen to our episode about it. If you haven't seen it, you should go see it or stream it when it starts streaming, and then listen to our episode about it.
Nice. That's Space the Nation. You can find it wherever you find your podcasts.
That's right.
Jen, what's up with psychoanalysis?
Well, we are March's Workplace Anxiety Month. So we have talked about session 9, and we also have an episode on mayhem that's going to be dropping probably, I think, the day before this one comes out. And then next month, speaking of Dreamcatcher, our next theme is going to be dreams, and we're going to be talking about Mulholland Drive and I believe Dream Warriors. So
nice. That's a fun pairing.
I know. Yeah, I'm excited. And then we're going to have a comfort horror episodes. We're still working some of them out, but we've got one on The Exorcist coming up soon. So
nice.
We're actually recording that tonight. So
I'm hard pressed to name a favorite movie ever, but I think if I had a gun to my head, I would say Mulholland Drive. So.
Really?
Wow.
I have not seen it all the way through, so I'm excited.
I've never seen it.
Oh wow, we got to watch it. It's the Lynch Fest is coming to Music Box, Mel. I might have to make you go to that. So, and Mel,
drag me there.
What's going on with you, Mel? Where can people find you?
You can find me at melcastle.com or on Twitter at melcastle. I don't have anything specific to really highlight other than the great interview that we recently did, Randall, which was really fun. We talked about Devil House with the lead singer of the Mountain Goats and great author. Please say his name because I don't know how to pronounce the last part of it.
John Darnielle.
Thank you.
Yeah.
John Darnielle.
Yeah, it should be, it'll be live by the time this episode comes out. But yeah, we had an incredible chat with John Darnielle that is going to, I think it's available on the main feed. So it's part of a new kind of little mini series that Mel and I are doing where we talk to modern horror authors about their new books. And it'll probably be every 2 months or so. We're going to have an episode. And we talked to John Darnielle, who I've seen the Mountain Goats live 15 times, seeing him for the 16th in May. I'm a big fan. So it was really cool to talk to him. And Devil House's new book is great. It's sort of it kind of confronts, I think, in a really compelling way, ethics within true crime writing. And
it's so good. It goes down these labyrinthine areas. You just like have no idea what this book is going to be until you've finished it. It's really interesting.
Yeah, so highly recommended. And ting you for listening to the Losers Club. We've got a lot of cool stuff coming up. Our next book is The Black House, the sequel to The Talisman. We're going to be talking about that, which should be super interesting. I've not read that since it first came out, so I'm diving into that soon. But thank you all for listening, and let's sign off with a long days and pleasant night.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. But you know you want somebody to treat you good.
This is the end of our show. For now. We hope you enjoyed this production. If you like our programming, consider searching for other bloody disgusting podcasts, such as Creepy, Horror Queers, The Boo Crew, SCP Archives, Nightlight, Margaret's Garden, and more.